Is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Sharing the love, spreading the light in real time. Friday night love stream.
Very happy to have a guy we instantly resonated with. Unbiased and on the fence. I'm talking about Shane C. Robinson. And his purpose is to rise above the worldviews that are designed to separate us so we can unite as one.
Sometimes you have to sort of take a step back, and I think Unbiased and on the Fence is a really, really good title for your show, because you are in the central point when you're unbiased and on the fence. That's what it means. It doesn't mean you're indecisive. It means you are taking the central point and you're seeing the multiple perspectives.
Unbiased and on the Fence.
If you haven't checked Unbiased on the Fence, go and check his channel out. You might like it.
This is Dan Hofeld from Talk is Cheap, and you're listening to Unbiased and on the Fence with Shane Robinson.
If this much sincerity enters your life, come to this much. What I know, I know. What I do not know, I do not know. I don't believe anything, I don't disbelieve anything. I'm willing to look at everything. You will become a sensible human being.
Have you checked out our website?
Visit us on the web at uotf.net. You're listening to The Love Stream.
All around the world in real time.
This is Shane with Unbiased and On the Fence. You're listening to the Friday Night Love Stream.
Your calls, your stories, on air. You're listening to The Love Stream.
Sharing the love and spreading the light all around the world. This is Unbiased and On the Fence.
Unbiased and on the Fence.
Welcome, you guys. It's Friday night. Happy Friday to you guys. Well, it's morning time. It's Saturday for some of you guys if you're in Australia or the UK. So wherever you are, welcome. And I'm so glad you could join us tonight. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and it's a fun evening, and we already are having problems with the phone system. So if you're getting a busy signal, just try to get in, and hopefully you can get through. Luckily, I have overprotected Sherry to help save the day. Let me get your name up there really fast. Sherry, are you there?
I'm here. How are you?
Doing wonderful. So you told me a story that I wanted to put at the top of the hour here, at the top of the show, because I know some people just can't make it 3 hours or whatever it is. But I definitely want them to hear this because, you know, I hear a lot of this going on. And, you know, I'm just so glad that I know somebody who actually has firsthand knowledge of this happening. Now, we want to, you know, preface this by saying that we're not saying that something isn't happening out there. We're just saying that things are being extremely exaggerated. And we've got a firsthand account of exactly how that's taking place. A single story. And if you can imagine, this is happening all over as they incentivize, you know, patients with COVID-19 and breathalyzers and things like that. Hospitals are incentivized to, you know, mark them as COVID. So Sherry, tell us this story, because when I heard this, I'm like, wow, it's like you hear this, you don't know any actual people that's contracted it or tested positive, right?
I don't. I sure do not. And
but you know somebody who on paper died of it, correct?
2 actually.
Right.
Yeah. So but the one that's been biggest and like the closest people to us was you know how it is when your daughter has a best friend and they're around like all the time growing up and stuff. Right. Well, this best friend has a little brother, and he got married, and they have a little baby that was like 1 year old. Mm-hmm. Well, he went to pick up dinner one night, and this girl, they didn't know that she was using drugs, and she had overdosed on heroin and died. And when he came back, she was gone. But they still transferred her to the hospital and all this. And what happened? This is
Darby's best friend?
Yes. And what happened was they brought when they brought him to the hospital, they were signing all kind of paperwork, and they said, "Look, we're going to put her down as having COVID-19 since she doesn't have insurance. This is going to help the hospital, and they're going to, you know, it'll also help the statistics with it." And they just signed it, but they were in a lot of duress. Like they were saying later, they were like, "God, I don't even know why I did that." Like, but they were like, you know, basically, they said, "I think if I hadn't not had insurance, I might have said something." But they almost made me feel like I needed to do it because I wasn't paying for anything. Of course, they really didn't do anything for her there except for, you know, do the bot, you know, whatever they do to process everything.
Okay,
But,
so to put it in simple terms, someone OD'd on some drug and was taken to the hospital, dead on arrival or dead within a short amount of time of arriving at the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And they approached the family of the deceased and asked them to sign some kind of paper. Was it the death, was it the medical examiner type paper that you sign for cause of death type thing?
Yes.
Okay. So they asked them if they can mark it as COVID-19. That way, at least they'll get paid at the hospital for it because of the whatever the government's doing to help pay for patients of COVID-19 or whatever. The incentives for if they're on a breathing machine or if they have a COVID-19 diagnosis. And diagnosis is not test, by the way. So, I mean, a diagnosis is you can say somebody's got it, and that's a diagnosis. It might not be true. It might not be tested or backed by any scientific evidence, but it's still that's what we see happening here. Is that right, Sherry?
That's right. And it's horrible because I had heard of it happening, but this was like people that I knew and heard from their own mouth, you know, and stuff like that. Now, the other one that happened was my mom has a fellow church member whose sister had been in and out of the hospital for years. She was older. She had multiple diagnoses like congestive heart failure and diabetes, and she's had kidney failure and stuff like that. She had been on ventilators before. This person felt like she kind of knew the process because this lady had been on a ventilator multiple times throughout her sickness. And this time she felt like they had put her on it too soon. But she ended up dying, and they told her that she had COVID-19 afterwards. But she said the way that she was following, like, her sister's care, like, they would come out and say, well, we're going to run this and this and this lab tomorrow. And then she would get the result the next day and all of that. Well, this never came up until after she died. So that's kind of another one. But I mean, I didn't talk this woman myself. My mom did. But it's the same kind of thing.
That is so crazy. You know. And it just makes you wonder why. Because, you know, if you're really trying to get to the bottom of something, come up with some kind of cure or something to fix it, you want your data as clean as possible. And this is the worst way to make the data coming in. You know, I mean, it's nonsense because they're marking people as dying of it that didn't die of it, and then, you know, that gets figured in with statistics. I mean, I hope they're keeping a clean set of statistics behind the scene at least, you know, over what they're presenting to the public, because that really, I mean, if you're really trying to track how something's spreading and stuff like that, you really need to have accurate data. I mean, that's all you have to rely on is your data, right? So if you're saying people have it, if you're saying people have it in cities that might not even have it there, but they're just marking it up, now it looks like the city is, you know, having some kind of outbreak there, and it's nothing but an outbreak of ink on a piece of paper, you know?
Well, and the things with this little girl that bothered me is think how many people like overdose and stuff that are like transients and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Or how many people just don't want the stigma of, you know, how they died. And they're like, oh, well, that's much better if they died of that than of that. So,
right. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yep.
I mean, there's all sorts of reasons why you would want to play along with it, you know?
So are we going to talk about why we think this could be happening, or?
Well, why would they want to mess up the data like that? That's one good question. Because if they're really trying to get to the bottom of it, then they wouldn't be messing up the data. So the only reason they would be messing up the data is if the data would be pointing to something. They don't want us to see what it's pointing at. That's the only reason you would mess the data up. So, and I've got some. I've jumped to some conclusions about stuff. Maybe, What do you think, Miss Sherry?
I think that they want to try to push a vaccine.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I just don't think that that's something that anybody, I just don't think that it's going to be a positive one. Just put it that way. And I had heard lately, like, that it stood for, like, certificate, COVID-19 stood for certificate of, what was it?
Identification or something?
No, it was certificate of vaccination, identification.
And then 19 is AI.
AI, right. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we can all get into again, it's jumping to conclusions, but I don't know. I just think it's the first steps trying to merge man and machine.
Right. But then again, you've got these catalysts that are put out there in a certain way. Like if you look at this right now, if you're a Christian right now and you're looking at what's going on where they're putting this like ink in the shots and then it's going to be putting a mark under your skin that they can read with some kind of nanotechnology, there's no Christian I know that I've grown up with that wouldn't look at that and say, oh, this sounds like the mark of the beast or something. I'm not getting no mark on me. So I think you need these extreme things to wake people up. And I think that's really what it is. I really think it's all a big show on the highest of realms here is what I'm talking about. Not like humans are doing this. I'm talking about the higher dimensions, not people on the earth plane. I think this is all behind the scenes. It's orchestrated. It's catalyst. It's pushing people to be more service to others. It's helping people get over that line. Maybe they're only 49 or 50%, and they need that little push right now, and I think they're getting that, and it's, or maybe they'll get more selfish out of the whole thing. You just never know. But the catalysts are designed to push you one way or another. So I think at the highest realm of all this, there's nothing to worry about. But yeah, I can totally see the fearful nature of pretty much any of these different scenarios. But I think that's what, shocks people awake, And
I think what I'll say right now is the same thing that I always say, is that I understand that, I guess I taught myself to come to some of these conclusions on my own. And with just those, I was like, so entrapped in like fear and everything. And it's just this channel and you that's helped me be able to have these different perspectives. And I thank God for that every day, because I would not be where I am now and probably sane if I hadn't found you and your show and the chat room people and all of that. I appreciate y'all so much.
I'm right with Jody. She's like, hell no. I'm not getting anything. I'll take my chances. Look, I'll just trust that. Shouldn't we have the right to choose if we want to trust our higher power to keep us safe?
And
trust
that's
our
what
diet,
I'm worried
our
about,
exercise? Why can't we trust our own? I mean, that's our own care. I mean, are we going to just throw the whole Constitution out the window here? I mean, you should be able to, take care of yourself. Some guy in a white lab coat shouldn't be able to force a shot in your arm.
But I feel like that's probably what it's coming to, because like they're saying that identification, the certificate of the vaccine itself will be like, required for you to like, especially people like me in the medical field, you're going to have that to work. I mean, they push the flu shot now, like you have to have it or you can't work, So there's going to be that, and traveling and all of that. We actually had a news story down here. I don't know if I told you about, I think it was around Easter. At Easter time, our local news came and said that they had proof, just because of like iPhone monitoring, that people weren't keeping the 6 foot distancing, the social distancing, and that they were like gathering with family and stuff. And I was like, wait a minute, what did that say?
Yeah. And hold on, I want to point this out, because this is a very important point, because they're pushing this whole app that you can get voluntarily, right? That you can put on your phone. It uses Bluetooth, and then it lets you know if you've been in a certain radius of another person that's contracted. It's supposed to be all anonymous and everything, so it's supposed to be safe. But keep in mind, she just talked about the news reporting. These are people that don't have an app. They straight up just tracked people's phone, saw they weren't at home, they weren't sheltering in place, they're going and visiting family on Easter, and they actually, to the point that the data was, they talked about it on the news. That they're just telling you right there, we watched you, we see you didn't stay at home, you went and visited mom, you did some Easter egg hunting in the backyard, we see your little phones moving all over. You know?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's really, scary and intrusive. And then that's where I was getting, I was going to bring one more thing up. I don't know if, okay, do you remember the thing that came up with the TV saying, we are here with you and all of that?
Right,
Well,
you guys got Cox, right?
yeah, and that was right around the time they sent a letter out, and they were saying that they were hooking up for free this new Wi-Fi called panoramic something. And I don't know, I just had a weird feeling about it. But here's the thing that got me. A commercial ran on the TV the other night. I was out visiting with my mom in the other room, and it said, since everyone's stuck at home, we wanted to offer you these free movies through Cox. Just pick up your remote and speak into it and say free, and they'll all come out. Well, so I thought it'd be fun to say other things in there, and I did. But, I'm a rebel. But anyway, so so then I kid y'all not, like a week later, I see one and it said, I don't know if it was saying if you wanted like tips to staying safe and, like hand washing and sanitizing and all that, just say coronavirus into your Cox cable remote. And,
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So right there, they're letting you know, we're always listening. Just talking to your remote.
Right.
We'll
Exactly.
hear you.
I know. It's you're killing me, Smalls. I just couldn't believe it.
I know. You got everybody. Pretty much every single person has a smartphone. It can always be listening or watching at any point. People are opting into these Alexis type devices in their home that are constantly listening. We've seen all sorts of malfunctions where it takes private conversations and just emails it to random people on your contact list.
Oh, geez.
I mean, just crazy stuff, or just, I don't know, just weird stuff with it. But
And I know everybody on here knows that I'm like kind of paranoid, but let me tell y'all and get your opinion of this in the chat room. Just okay, for a lot of people might wonder why I don't like write long emails back and stuff like that, because everybody else will use that little talk feature. Well, mine, it'll like say some jacked up stuff that's like synchronistic and usually scary and relevant to what's going on at the time, and just my talk text is haunted.
Okay, let's ask people.
Okay, let's
please
see.
chime in the chat, or if you're watching this later, in the comments below, as to whether you think it's possible that when you use your voice texting on your smartphone, that you get some pretty strange results that seem a little bit out of, I don't know. It's not just messing up, but it seems like it's actually synchronistic, or it makes sense, but not in the way you like it to make sense. Is this what you're saying? Sure.
That's what I'm saying. And I mean, so it can be threatening, and it can be perverted. And I mean, it's really weird. I just am wondering if anyone else has experienced anything like this at all, or is it just me?
Now, I had some pretty interesting things years ago, but I thought it's gotten pretty good now. One thing I can tell, if I'm driving and I'm out, because I got Boost Mobile, so it's not hard for me to get outside of my area. If I get outside of my area and I go to use the voice texting, it doesn't have access to data to like double check, I guess. I guess it runs it through data to get a second opinion. So I don't know. All I know is if I don't have data on my phone, then I get more strange results like that don't match as well. I have to speak way more clearly if I don't have a signal. And I'm just, because I can send text if I'm roaming, but you don't get data or whatever. But I have noticed that it's not nearly as accurate if I'm not on, if I don't have a data connection. So I don't know, maybe something in the settings or.
I don't think so.
No, you got it on demon. You got it on demon mode or something.
Yeah. Let me tell you, I know I had rented a car at one point for something, and it was doing it through the car too. I mean, I guess that's still my phone though.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I was just like, no one else has that problem, but it will not say anything even halfway relevant to what I'm saying in it.
All
And I
right.
mean, I speak somewhat clearly. I know I have
Mhm.
trouble at sometimes, but you know, it's really bad. Did anyone say anything in there?
Let's see. Let's see. Karen never uses voice. She always types. So she's
Good
like
for
you.
her.
Well, Jody's had everything she's talked about show up on Facebook. Let's see. Not just on Facebook, but Amazon, eBay, and any site I go to or talk about. Now, I've had, like, you know, you have a conversation with someone, you're not even on your phone, and then you get on, like, Facebook, and it's got ads for what you were just talking about. Me and Go-Kart Bob were talking about that, because he had someone talking to him about, like, Matchbox cars, and he's not interested in that yet. He was getting ads for it right after that, so.
Oh yeah, I think I told everybody about that, but I had a friend that was having some domestic violence issues, and she was an RN, and I was like, look, how about you ever thought about travel nursing, because they'll pay for you to get there, and they'll pay for the house that you're renting or whatever, and if you even don't rent a car and use your car, they'll give you like stipend for the rental car, and so you really can make a lot of money doing it, and plus they would move around a lot and far away and all this. And she had not heard of it. And she texted me later and said, oh my God, look at this, screenshot it. And there was a travel nursing ad on her Facebook right after we had talked. And another thing, this is something. I had met this girl at my job, and she only worked a couple of days, hopefully not because of me. But I had talked to her about the Mandela effect, and she was clearly affected. And we'd gotten into discussing some of them, and it came up about that video that Aaron had did on that 666 cough syrup. And we were talking about that, and she had watched the video, and we get off at like 11 p.m. At 2 a.m. She texts me, and she's like, oh my God, look at this. And on her Facebook, it came up someone that was not her friend that had said something like, maybe this would knock out the coronavirus. And it had that 666 cough syrup on it.
That's kind of spooky, huh?
It scared her. She didn't come back, but it wasn't because of me. I'm telling y'all, it might sound like it was, but it wasn't.
Wait, was that the last video Aaron put out?
Which one?
The 666 cough syrup one?
With Aaron?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I think there was others after that then.
Oh, okay. Who were you saying didn't come back? Weren't you talking about Aaron?
No, the nurse that that had it happen, yeah.
Okay.
But she had actually got laid off, from work because of the coronavirus. They'd cut a couple people, and she was one of them that had got cut. Sweet, sweet, sweet girl. Shout out to Shalisa.
Okay, so let's talk Mandela effect, because I've talked to people that's experienced weird. Well, Michelle and I talk about the whole idea, the whole feeling of nostalgia that you can. So it's like a really overwhelming feeling. Sometimes with the memories, sometimes without. And for some people, though, it's like really intense, and it's not a good experience for them. So it can get more intense. But there's a lot of different things going on with, just shifting, strange things happening, Mandela effect-ish type things happening, things appearing. So let's get into your mom first off.
My poor mom. Okay, so she's been going through all kind of weird stuff, and I don't know if I told y'all about this or not, but so we have some local supermarkets down here and stuff that are like Cajun, and they have these little people make stuff like, I don't know, cooking peppers and stuff like that, and put them out. Well, here's what happened. She asked me what happened to some gator puffs. It was on the cabinet. She thought I had left it. It wasn't open, so she didn't want to open it and eat them. So she's like, I'm like, what are you talking about? And I had no idea what she was talking about. And, you know, of course, I said, anything that I leave out, you can have, but I don't know what you're talking about. So then a couple days later, she's like, these, here they are. And she had got up and they were just like on the cabinet. We have no idea where they came from. So that kind of stuff's been happening. And then she went to like make some cupcakes, and she has 2 cupcake pans that have 12 each. So, you know, you can do the whole thing if you have both of them. And one of them was missing, and I went and searched for her. I knew where she kept them, and then I looked everywhere else where they might have been. It was not there. It was not there. And then it showed up later, like, I don't know, 2 weeks later when you don't need it.
Right.
It happened to her with a potato peeler. And I mean, I've searched for the stuff for her, you know. I had it happen with my thing is even weirder though, because I for a little while I was having these little time slips into this like different reality, like in the physical when I'm awake, okay. And then and I can differentiate between them, and they would be really short, but they were really real, and they were overwhelming, like emotionally and just strange. And I actually had bought some new towels while I was in it, then had the towels show up here, and then they disappeared again, and then they came back again. And I know this sounds great. I know it sounds nuts, y'all. I know, but that's what happened. It's had the
And
weirdest.
then you told me about this one because you said when the towels appear, they didn't reappear where they were. They were right out in the open. You said, right, where
Right.
the whole time you were looking for them, if they had been out in the open, right in the middle of the floor or something. You said, right?
Yeah,
Or
like
next to the
right by my
bed or
bed.
something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's no way that I could have missed them, you know.
That's
So
weird.
it is. It's so strange.
So do you feel like there's like interaction going on? Like there's a being that's sort of like maybe your higher self is tweaking things and trying to get your attention, or do you feel like it's sort of a byproduct of something else going on? And we're just seeing, you know, like maybe we're just shifting through the dimensions and things are changing, and it's because I found meaning in some of them, but other ones I find it hard to find some meaning in. But I know humans are really good at applying meaning to something that might not have a meaning either. But then again, I don't feel like there's anything that's coincidental or accidental, I should say. I feel like everything is serving some sort of purpose. And I don't feel like there's noise or randomness. I feel like that's only our inability to see how it fits perfectly, you know?
I think, you know, they say that, you know, every minute, you know, whatever it is that you're focusing on or where your vibration's at or whatever, you'll shift a little bit into that timeline there. You know, with string theory and all, there can be thousands of these with multiple probabilities and outcomes and all that. And it just seems that some of them that I and my mom have shifted into lately are involving, you know, like physical items, because they'll disappear and reappear. And it at first it was really disconcerting, and then I just kind of got used to it. Like the other day we were laughing because I came home from work. I had worked a night shift, and she was like on her knees on the floor, and I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm looking for the remote. And she's like, I'm telling you, you know, it was right here. Well, I believe her, you know. And she's like, I'm not crazy. And I said, well, look, I'm just going to look in the bathroom in case you carried it in there or something and set it down. You know, when you went to the bathroom, I mean, I looked everywhere, and then I started helping her look in the couch cushions and everything like that. Under the table, well, there's this table between like her lazy boy and her couch, this little table. It's got her Bible and all that on it. And of course, we had looked on there. And all of a sudden, when I stood up from like being on the floor, I stand up and I'm like, Mom, look. And the remote was right on top of the books, like the Bible and the little daily verse thing or whatever. There it is. And it's huge. This remote is like nothing to play with. It's a big remote, you know. And there it was.
Wow. It's a huge remote with a listening device in it. Of course, it's got to be at least big enough for a microphone, right?
Oh, yeah. I have to say, I don't know what it made me laugh so much. I had saw this commercial. I'm sure y'all have seen it. It might be an older one, but there's like a ceiling fan on there, and the man's frustrated with it, and he's like talking to it or whatever, and like the fan says something like, "Stop yelling at me. I'm just a fan." But it's like because it's so used to all that Alexa stuff and everything. Though, I'm sorry, I thought it was funny.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
It was funny.
But back to the Alexa thing. Okay, so here's Karen. She's in her house. She mentioned while in her home that she might have to have her dishwasher fixed. So that was yesterday, I think. Let me see. I gotta scroll back up. Yeah, yesterday. Today she gets a text from a handyman. She only talked about it. Do you have Alexa in your house, Karen? P.S. I had never called for any repair or handyman. And Jody said, same here, Karen. So how much of this, I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of like, it's kind of like AI synchronicities, right? Because you're like, oh, I was just thinking about this. And now the ad, hey, it must mean I'm supposed to buy this, right? I mean, how do we start making the distinction between AI-inspired synchronicity from them just listening and knowing your habits to, that's why it's so important now more than ever to really go within and have discernment and just connect with your higher self. Really, the only way to be sure these days, everything's like a freaking minefield. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, I have to say, I mean, and I know everybody will probably disagree with me. I think Jody might get what I'm talking about here, but I have always felt for a while, and it slowed down, thank God. But I feel like I had interaction, like through the phone, like through the YouTube and text messaging and all of that, from some kind of like outside entities or something. And I do have an example that just happened to me the other night. I was in my friend Michael's chat room, and I was just making a joke because my daughter, she used to, I guess you'd say, kind of have a crush on or whatever, and she'd be like, tell Michael his voice is smooth as butter. And so like I put him a little note, so like, you know, we still listening once in a while or whatever. And I said, you know, Darby said your voice is still smooth as butter. Well, when I went to go make my next text message to whoever I was texting, in the box, as if I had typed it and put it in there, about to send it to whoever, and it wasn't Michael, but whatever. And there was like the stick of butter emoji in there. And of course, right then it made me think of that. And it was just a weird situation because his show got kind of dark, and I kind of like stopped listening to it as much, you know, trying to do the high vibe thing or whatever. And I don't know, it's that kind of stuff just kind of creeps me out sometimes, but I'm getting better at handling it and trying to, you know, to not dip my toe in any of that scary stuff. But every once in a while, something like that happens. Does anyone else have anything like that happen in the chat room? I gotta know this answer.
Okay, so I think it's interesting because, you know, you have different people. We don't even have to really get into names specific. We can mention Albert Taylor. You know how Albert Taylor does these soul traveling out of body experiences and stuff. And
yeah.
What does he even say about the dark stuff? Does he talk about that as a lower realm that you have to move through, or does he even like experience that? I'm trying to.
I don't know, but I'd like that discussion that you and I had. Okay, okay, let's see. How can I bring this up there? There was a person I was working with, we'll just say it like that, that was having like internal stimuli, responding to internal stimuli, and claimed that it was like government, CIA. I don't know if you can say all that on here. Too late. And then said like, I was like, and I don't know how it all came up, but basically, and then added in like ghosts, spirit guides, and saying that they were benevolent and that they were orbs. So I know that's that kind of runs the gamut of whatever, but maybe it is kind of like the gatekeepers, like we were talking about, of maybe like soul development, like you kind of like have to burst through that little barrier before you can have a little breakthrough that's positive. I don't know if y'all are following me, what I'm saying. You'll probably word it better than me, Shane.
Yeah. So let's go back to my first out of body experience, right? So
Okay.
and a lot of people have this. They'll say that they're having. I've heard so many people describe this and attach like beliefs to it, entities and stuff like that to the whole experience. I'm like, oh my gosh, our mind is so powerful, you guys. I mean, if we really think something's out there after us, whether it's there or not, we're going to see proof of it being there, if that's what we truly believe. So I think it's really interesting how any of these things that are sort of tools to higher learning and accelerated learning, like going out of your body and lucid dreaming, things like that, seem to have gatekeepers, like, kind of a level of fear that you have to go through. You have to conquer that fear before you're allowed in. And I think there's a reason for that, because if you're like this powerful creator being and you're really triggered by fear, you might go in there and create a hell on earth or in dream time and just really torture yourself with a nightmare of your own creation. And really, that's what people are doing in their wake time.
Yeah, I agree with you, because I don't know about anyone else, but I have noticed 1,000% increase of speeded up in my thought to physical manifestation experiences. And I notice I have to really be careful of my thoughts, because I guarantee I'm gonna see it. It just like I was thinking, I had went to my house the other day to stay with my daughter, and I was like, oh great, I'm gonna end up getting a flat tire. This gravel road. Well, when I came out of the house in the morning, guess what?
Flat tire?
Yeah. So I
Oh my
mean,
gosh.
it's just stuff like that I've just seen happen, and
But for people that aren't awake, they're like, I knew it, and then their whole day is ruined.
mm-hmm.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? They don't realize they actually did it by focusing
Right.
so hard and intently on it, and then it actually happens, and it ruins that day, and then they got to
And
replace the tire on top of all that. So
yeah, and I was like frustrated. So there's emotion behind it, like
yeah,
energy and motion. And I'm sitting there watching myself do it. So, I'm trying to work on stuff like that too. But yeah, I think that they're speeding up. And I remember William Buellman mentioning in his Adventures in the Afterlife book, he's like, well, we're here to learn how to get our manifestation skills underway, because the people like in 7D realms, I mean, they don't want you there if you're gonna be in there and causing pink elephants to show up in the middle of the floor and stuff like that. You need to have that. It's just like you said, who would you want to be standing by in the afterlife if you knew that we manifest instantly what level we're vibrating at and what it is that we see? So nobody wants to be hanging out with the one that's, bringing all the scary ghosts and stuff in, right?
yeah. But I always feel like this whole system was designed by us, even what we perceive to be the Satan or the opposition, the adversary. That think of like how much we learn and grow from it. And I often will point to Pac-Man because it's simple enough. You can see how he feels like he's stuck in this maze and these ghosts, they're chasing him. But from a higher level, you see that he's gonna pass that level, move on to the next, and get higher and higher scores. And then he's not really stuck at all. He's in this game, the Pac-Man is, of course. And the ghosts aren't angry and after him. They're just programmed to do a certain thing. One's programmed to cut him off, one's programmed to chase him, another one's programmed to just kind of move randomly. Or they all have their set parameters. So even when people will turn things into sort of like demons and things like that, they add the personality, they add the anger, they add the emotion that this thing is actually after you. It wants you. It's angry at you for some reason, right? It's picking on you. And I think it moves you into the victim mentality instead of realizing that, oh my gosh, this thing is following a certain set of rules. It came up for a certain reason right now. What triggered it to come up? And you start thinking of it as, that's why I say the whole game thing. I think it's handy because you can think of it in terms of game mechanics and why did this happen? And then you can look at it, you can analyze it. You can look at it more in a way that will help you avoid or see exactly why it popped up, what triggered it to come up to begin with, how to avoid it happening in the future, what lesson are you supposed to be learning, because it's kicking this back at you to learn a lesson about something. Fear, for instance, about whatever, the gatekeeper of the out-of-body realm or whatever it is. But it's just doing what it's designed to do. And I told you guys, I heard waking up one morning this voice that said, remember, the Matrix is designed to make it seem real and to hide the fact that it's doing it. That was the main two things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so interesting. And then especially, your game theory and all, I've liked that and everything. And then with the holiday video, and we started finding the Easter egg thing and all that. And I wanted to say that how cool it was that the author Richard Bach had got kind of brought back into my, consciousness, I guess you'd say, because I had heard him on Coast to Coast years ago and got the Jonathan Livingston Seagull book. And then I ordered his, the next books. And one of them was Illusions. And there was like a feather on the front of it, which reminded me of my dad. And so I read it. It was exactly like your theory of your big toe theory of everything.
Oh yeah, that's Tom Campbell's My Big Toe. He's
the same thing, really. Yeah.
What'd you say?
He's kind of the same thing, really, too. Like what you think and what Richard Bach wrote about.
I think it's really handy. It's just a lot of people just reject it right off the bat because you think game, you think it's just to have fun. But I think of it in terms of video games that people take very seriously. So it's not just for leisure. You're actually learning, you're developing, you're learning to be a better player in the game, a key player. Because a lot of times, the people we typically think of as the sleeple, as Eileen has termed it, they're just not awake yet. They're unconscious, sort of just doing whatever they're doing. They're not really playing the game. They're being played by the game. They haven't woke up to actually playing the game yet. You know what I mean? It's like they're sort of just following their script, and I think for people that don't like the whole game thing, a movie script is another way. You can take the script, you can just take what's handed to you, you can ad-lib a little bit more and change things up a little bit, or you can, and it's like one of those things that, you have to find a way to look at it. Whatever moves you out of victim mentality, that's really the whole goal of seeing it as a game, other than just a bunch of random stuff happening. That we're here to learn something, and you're moving away from that. A classroom is another great one. The only thing is, I didn't like school, so when I think of a classroom, it's not. And if I had turned school into a game like I did with college, then I would have enjoyed it more.
Yeah, that's right now I'll insert the thing that I always say, and I really did just realize that she had a little bit of a different perspective on it than what I'd taken from it. And, we can all think our own way, but I was a strong believer and supporter in that graph that Vanessa VA made. And just to refresh, on the bottom layer, it had the non-affected people and then the Mandela affected people. And then they would, as these dimensions raise up, or I would say as you raise your vibration, there was right above that was this horror targeted individual area where just, awful. I really think it's manifesting your fears, basically. And I kind of hung out there for about a good 4 years that were just awful. In fact, that's when most of the things when I was telling y'all about a minute ago kind of happened. And then as you get above that, you start seeing beautiful synchronicities that are miraculous and that show you that you're on your right path. And it's just the universe is totally talking to you, But the second, trust and believe, the second that your vibe gets knocked off at all, you're going to what I call dip your toe back into the red zone, and something is going to show its face and remind you, wait. You need to not do that, or be here again. So I seriously know exactly where I'm at on this chart, and then it goes up into the new earth, and then heaven on earth and all that. But what I realized
wait, now this chart, this is Vanessa VA's chart?
Yes.
Vanessa VA, YouTuber.
It's on the Tesla video that she had.
Right.
And so the other day she'd messaged me and said, look, I finally, because I had been telling her, you need to make another video about that, you know, like keep it at the forefront. I think it's so important. Right. So she did, and she let me know, and I listened to it, and then I realized that she had a totally different perspective on it than me. And that's okay though, because from what I've experienced before really seeing it, I could see that my journey has followed it. And what she believes though is more so that the second layer, the Mandela affected area, has dropped down and merged into the first area. And then the red zone is like dropping down into that one and merging into that until they like all kind of collapse, you know, into one. And so, I mean, I don't know which one's right. Everybody can take it how they.
That's so funny because I can see both as being right. I can see it as if you're viewing it as like you're integrating like those aspects of yourself, because in essence that is kind of what you're doing. You're learning to integrate it and not be ruled by it, instead have it be, you know, subject to the I don't know, your higher self, or, you know, a higher consciousness of yourself, instead of, you know, it's like being the observer of the voices, like I always talk about, instead of being the voices. So it's like, right. It's sort of like you get those voices tamed, and then you're sort of integrating them, because they don't ever go away, right? I mean, you can be triggered at any point, and it's like you get quicker and quicker about catching it. You know, in fact, you can get it to where you don't even respond physically. Maybe you felt a little jolt of adrenaline or something. You know, it always finds some way of it getting triggered, and then, you know, you just pounce on that and like, what the heck was that? Why did that happen? You know, with the microscope. And you can move through these really fast, because one thing I'll tell you right away, I spent maybe 2 weeks where you spent 4 years.
Oh, God.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm talking about feeling like, you know, I went through feeling like the government was after me because I was on YouTube talking about stuff they didn't want me talking about, and they were beaming me, and, you know, here I am having my first out-of-body experiences, and instead of enjoying it, I'm thinking that either I'm getting abducted at the time, or I'm getting beamed or targeted. I felt like a targeted individual. I'll tell you what, anybody out there, if you just pretend for an hour like you're targeted and go out in public and just look around, you'll see everybody looking at you. You'll totally feel like people are looking at you and messing with you and following you around, and that's such a bad place to be, because you're going to experience that whether it's happening or not, if that's where your head goes. And a lot of people go there, you know, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen, I'm sure it does, but a lot of it is just completely generated in the mind, I feel like, you know.
Yeah, it's something though, 'cause I mean, like I said, mine got really extensive to where, you know, and I felt like it was because of what I was doing, like meditating and praying for abused children. And then I just, you know, I had so many things happen that, you know, it's just hard to even describe them all. And there was physical manifestation things. There was a lot of dream time stuff, a lot of things that you wondered, wait, was this in the dream or was it real? Or then stuff that the dream would manifest into the reality. Just, I mean, just a mess. Right. It's getting better, so I'm very thankful for that. And again, it's because of this channel and people in the chat room and you and everything. I mean, I don't think I would still be here. If it's me doing it to myself, then I'd have done finished myself off, because that was like really bad, but it's getting better. So thankful.
Right. Did any harm ever come to you through all that time?
No, I just had like the hair cutting incidents, and that's, I would like, anytime it would happen, my hair would get cut, and then I would get messages, and it would say stuff like "Mwahaha, Vicinity's hair cutting," stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And but it's all, like I said, it stopped, but every once in a while it happens, and you know, it'll be connected to, like, I had even had stuff happen, like I said, in this chat room before. Why does this always come up when I talk on here? I'm so sorry. But, you know, just little things that were like so synchronistic. And then I'm like, well, wait, are they talking about me or my situation or whatever? You know? Yeah. But I can even do that with like emojis someone drops in there. And I'm like, that's like connected to what I'm thinking about or whatever. So I don't know. I'm just glad that it's getting better. But the reason I do talk about it is because it's so scary. And if there's anyone else going through that, I'm your girl to tell you how to fix it, because it took a long time to get through it, and I got it. And when things get rough, it like kind of comes back a little bit, so I can see I've learned why and how to fix it and all that. But it's really hard to accept at first that it's the way that you're feeling and what you're focusing on that's causing it. And it really is. It's because you're like, no, I wouldn't do that to myself. There's no way. And then when you really evaluate it and just give the other thing a shot, it really does work.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think T. Taylor said it really well. It says, you'll magnetize the timeline that you shift in every moment. Let me see, it's scrolling up on me. There's infinite timelines. So if you believe you're being targeted, guess what? Guess which timeline you're going to go to. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. And
so
that's another thing. You can have somebody that's like messing with you, right? Now, I'm a firm believer in that this is the Matrix doing this to you. I don't believe, because you'll notice it's coming through multiple people. Now, unless you think you're so important that you've got this whole agency out to get you. And
and I don't really think that. So
they're coming through family members and strangers, and I mean, you can see it's coming through you everywhere. It's coming to you from every direction. So either it's the Matrix doing it because it knows it's trying to bring that out, and it's just making it happen for you, right?
Yeah.
And it feels like it's coming. It feels like it's coming from individuals, and that they know. But I don't feel like. I feel like people deliver messages all the time, good and bad, and have no idea what they said or the impact they.
T. Taylor's in the chat room right now.
Yeah.
Hey T, look, because let me let her hear this one really quick. So, like, I was sleeping at night, and it felt like a body like slammed down on top of me, and then I heard my daughter, who was sleeping by me, say, you're not supposed to be here, you need to get out of here. And then I was like, Darby, did you just say something? And she was like, no, but I heard her clear as day. Well, then it happened again. Something slammed down on top of me, and then she said it again. Now this time when I like kind of was awake, I realized that she was in the bathroom. So she's coming out of the bathroom. This is in real life. And I said, Darby, did you just say this? And she's like, no, Mom, I was in the bathroom, So I like get back to sleep, and again, pow, I get, knocked again. And it's almost like it felt like someone was slammed on me, and then it like kind of jiggles like they're trying, I don't know. Next thing you know, I'm standing in the middle of my living room behind a couch, and there's like this slender, tall man with a hat, like a top hat with his legs crossed, sitting on the other couch. I couldn't make out his face. He was dark. I had a really neutral feeling, like I wasn't scared of him, but I wasn't like thrilled that he was there. And what gets me is like 2 days later, I'm in a chat room, and this is where it just kills me. Someone says, oh, I hate it when I'm sleeping and I get knocked out of my body and then have a conversation with someone and don't remember what was said. And then it goes on to say scary things, like 3D assassins or 4D assassins, 5D, all this stuff. And I'm like, I just get out of there, and I'm like, what is going on?
That was in my chat?
No.
Oh, see? Right there.
No,
hang on and unbiased and on the fence.
This was way before that, way before that. But I wanted to tell Tony some of the stuff that I was talking about, because it was really scary, at the time when it's going on, Did she say anything?
Jody said she got attacked 2 nights ago. First time in almost 20 years.
Wow. She should try to call in.
Oh, yeah. She did say, I do want to state, however, that personally she thinks that when you awaken, it's almost like you trigger an alarm and you get handed, like a handler to try to make you doubt yourself or to tap out. Yeah, to test you. Yeah, that's why, man, you hear people all the time, they make a change, and then all of a sudden they feel like they get attacked, Because
yeah, it could be true. And I know this one this one guy that I've talked to, that had been interviewed on, I had booked him on another show, and he said that it sounded to him like what was happening is that when you end up being set onto the right path, that it's almost like someone's got to wave a flag at you and say, you know, we know that you're right there. And he said basically like moths are attracted to the light, and that's what they are, is like little moths. Like, I don't know.
See, I think I hear all these things. You hear about, you know, especially coming from Christianity, you hear everything in terms of like angels and demons and possession and things like this, right? And it's always sort of pushing it off on this other very personal entity that's out to get you, like I was saying earlier. But if you think of it more like I was saying, like it's just things are programmed to respond in a certain way, and it's just a set of parameters. It's like basically an algorithm. It's beyond anything that any kind of AI humans can make, but same type of principle. It's just designed to give you back. Think of it like this, okay? When you start moving along on a bike, right? You're moving on the bike and you start feeling the wind blowing on you. You're not like surprised that there's some wind resistance there. We're like used to that. Well, these types of things are simply resistance. As you begin to move in your spiritual development, you're like, this is like the wind. This is the resistance in making, so it's actually a good sign. It's like you're feeling the wind, the resistance of making progress. And it can be looked at like that. And you don't have to add such scary characteristics to it. It's just wind trying to hold you back.
So now you're like making me, like I hadn't looked at it like this. This is like, I mean, I've heard you say this before, but something clicked for me. In that, okay, everybody knows this, I'll say it fast, but whenever Michael Jackson had appeared to me and said, you need to focus, you need to remember who you are, right? Mm-hmm. Well, how weird is it that in that Michael Jackson Halloween special, whenever at the end, when the kids, you know, are being revealed stuff, there was like 3 adversaries that they had ran into that were like, you know, they learned a lesson from him and all, but they were scared and like almost pushed to death and stuff.
What were they again? Because I remember it was like a skeleton-looking guy.
There was a spider, and he had a long line of relative spiders, and it was like in a pyramid on there. You know what I mean? Like he was an elite spider. Let's put it that way. Anyway, at the end, they all would like spin around and be turned into the other one. And then there was the cat, and then there was the other one was like a pumpkin man, like the straw man, you know, like.
Right, yeah.
And then at the end, the little kid is like, oh, it was Michael all along.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And, you know, you can really see how that fits, how they talk about, like, you know, we've lived all these lives multiple times in different roles and things like that. And, you know, it's like, we're the Satan for other people, and they're the Satan for us, if you think of it as in the root word of it being adversary, you know? And it's like we all get used to help the other one grow in different lifetimes and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you know, it's all for the better of ourselves, to help us grow.
And it's so funny because, like, I saw some videos. In fact, I had just mentioned this to someone the other night, that he had said, like, before he died or something, he was talking about, like, that everybody was going to be going on this big adventure and all this stuff. And it's so funny when I look back now with what you just said and all. That's crazy. See why I love having these talks?
Oh, yeah.
But, so yeah, there's all kind of time slip. Is other people talking about like ending up in other places and dreams or in reality, and then all of a sudden they flip back, or?
I don't know. Now I've definitely had some strange, just really dream-like awake times, and I don't know, just the difficulty in, I don't know, maybe because I've been meditating more, but just, I don't know, just kind of having difficulty distinguishing, you know, what is a memory, what was a dream, what really happened, and did I really say that? You know, if I'm having a conversation with somebody, and then like now, you know, I might wonder, like, did I ever say that, or did I think it? Was I waiting to say it? That, you know,
I have
it's just sort of this cloud Go ahead.
This is a great one that I can tell the chat room about what happened to me the other day. So I'm just sitting there, you know, like, and I see come on my post on YouTube, and it was Jerry from Dark Wolf's Den, and he's like, join me either tomorrow or later this afternoon, something like that, when I'm having Shane on from Unbiased and On the Fence at 2 p.m. Central Standard. I don't even remember if it said that on there. Just 2 p.m. Okay. So I was like, cool, you know, like or whatever. And then I had said something to you about it. I was like, oh, so you're gonna be with Jerry on the show or whatever, and you were like, no. And I'm telling you, with all of my being, I saw that. I saw it. And then I asked him later, and I was like, did you have this on? He was like, no, but you know what? I was going to. That's what's so weird about this. He was kind of going on and on about how he was thinking about doing it and like never did it or something. Asked you to go on there.
No, that's so weird because that's what I was. Okay, so when you hit me up, you're like, I didn't know you were going on with Jerry today. I'll be watching or something. I'm like, wait, what? No, like,
yeah.
So I'm like checking my emails from Jerry. I'm like, wait, did we schedule something? Because
so
it was
sorry.
right. The time you said it was exactly the time we would have scheduled something if we had. It was like you said. I think you said 1 o'clock that afternoon on a Wednesday or Thursday or whatever. So I'm like
That's
checking everything.
So weird.
Yeah. Now here's the weird thing. Me and Jerry had been working on some International Mandela Effect Conference stuff like 2 days before that, and we got cut short. He had to, like his boss had called him, you know, downstairs or something. He's like, I'm so sorry, I got to go or whatever. Had we not been interrupted, which I think it was because the hotel was going to open sooner than they thought or something. So something changed, right, in the timeline, right? You can actually see how it unfolded differently. Had we not been interrupted, we would have had a regular ending. We probably would have planned on something in the future, but he had to go really fast. So he's like, so sorry, man, I got to go. Sorry to cut it short. And we just ended it like that. But when you told me the time, I'm like, that's totally the time we would have did it at. And then I remember we got cut short. And so it sounded familiar, even though I should have known that for sure that I wasn't going on there, but I had to check. I double checked my schedule.
I just thought it was so weird because I can tell you what he was wearing, the way that the camera was pointed at him, you know, what he said. I can almost hear his voice in my head. I was not dreaming. I was wide awake. And it's just stuff like that kind of, you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I've been having a lot of weird symptoms and stuff too that are like different. Some they're pretty neat. Like I know I've been having like these chills that are really strong, and it's almost a vibrating or whatever, like in my shoulders, up my neck, and up my crown area. And it'll last a long time. It'll be really intense. And I've actually felt that like everywhere on my body at sometimes where it just, and I know the feeling. It's like the feeling that I'll have like right before I'm going into like sleep paralysis or something, like before. It's like a precursor to OBE, an out of body experience. That's the kind of feeling that I'll have. And so I've had that. And then I started having this other thing happen to me today where like, say I touch someone like my grandson or something, it's like, I guess I'm so focused on that instead of maybe other things in my mind that I can tell you, like, I could tell you if I set my hand down on the table, which finger hit first as I was setting it down. And I could feel all of it. I don't know how to explain. It's almost like a hyper sensation of feeling. And I can feel like the energy from whoever I'm touching and, you know, or whatever I'm touching really strong to the point that it like almost makes me cry and stuff. It's weird. And
to me, that sounds like what I experienced when I started really becoming present in the now. I just started noticing more of what's happening in the now when you're really paying attention to what you're doing every moment, you know. And another really nice byproduct of this was that whenever I'm like, oh my gosh, where is whatever, where's my phone or whatever, I have no problem with thinking like, where did I last see it? Oh yeah, I was present. I was present. I remember I said it right there, and you can actually remember where you were, because I guess we're just always in our mind, and we're just on autopilot, and we're not even really experiencing reality. But when you're present, you'll remember where you set it down, and things like that. And when you do notice that you're not remembering, you're like, I haven't been present lately because I have no idea where my keys are or whatever,
Yeah, well, I mean, it was just it was definitely notable, and so I wanted to bring it up and see if other people were having it. I noticed I tend to be like a couple weeks behind everyone else, so sure other people are having it. Like you and Michelle can say something on a show or whatever, and then like 2 weeks later, I'm like, oh, I remember them talking about this, or
Right. Jody's saying she's been experiencing it for years, so I wonder if does it seem like it could be connected with being present, Jody? Like when you learn to be more in the now and present and connected with your higher self. That's where the connection with your higher self is, in the now as well. Everything else is a distraction. That's why all the synchronicities happen in the now, or they pull you back to the now when you see them,
Well, whatever causes that, whether it's good or bad, I got that one down to it.
Now, see, I was wondering if, because I've heard people talk about their hearing changing. Of course, like, the ringing and the pressure and stuff like that, but other things happening. Or maybe their clair audience turning on, or their third eye being activated. It seems like we're undergoing upgrades with all of our senses and all of our spiritual senses, and things are getting turned on. And I think that would kind of fall into the whole clair sentience, maybe, or one of the feeling ones, maybe that's starting to get heightened.
Yeah, and then also I noticed I've always seen, like, in my peripheral vision, like orbs and stuff for many years, but lately it just seems like I've been inundated with them. They're just everywhere, and it's not even just in the peripheral, it's like everywhere, and they're like all different colors and different sizes, and they have like blue ones and like dark blue ones and flashy ones and all that. But now it's got to the point that they used to startle me, and then I used to like get all excited when I saw them and everything, and now it's just like they're there all the time, so I'm just like kind of used to it. But I need to be more appreciative of it when I see it. But it's gotten to be very, very common. Now, the hearing thing, it's funny you said that, because one thing I noticed is, like, today I was listening to a lot of music and, like, songs that I've known forever. It's like, instead of hearing, like, the lyric part, because, I'm a girl, so I, like, listen to, like, the lyrics and stuff all the time. I'll hear, like, the
melody and the words, but
it's more like the bass line guitar or something will be, like, pointed out, like, standing out to me more than anything else or something. Okay, and then that's all I can hear. Like, I mean, like, when
okay, hold on. I gotta tell you about this, because I've been noticing this a lot, because that's typically what I focus on, and especially if I like a piece of music, I'll like enjoy the drums, and as soon as I get tired of that, I'll listen to it a bunch and just kind of learn the bass line, and then I'll listen to it, and so you kind of work through a song that you like, in your mind. So what I've been noticing as a result of the Mandela effect, now this is one of the things that makes it seem like it's just sort of a side effect, because I've found messages in Mandela effect. They seem very purposeful. Some of them are very purposeful. They don't seem like they're just accidental. But some of them are so small of a change, like what you're talking about. I think what you're talking about could be a result of the mix being a little bit different, like the bass is just a little bit louder, because I've been noticing the mix of songs has changed a little bit. It's like we just jumped into a different timeline where whoever was adjusting the knobs just did it a little bit differently, and the sound is different as a result of it. But I've also noticed like I'm a huge Tori Amos fan, right? So I've listened to some of her songs a lot, like slept to her CD and stuff like that. Listened to it with headphones on, and I've noticed like some of her breathing patterns have changed. Just little things that no one would notice. I can't even it just sounds weird, but I've noticed things like that. That the only thing I can think of is, if it was set up in a way that I wouldn't notice it, and it's just for me,
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all I can think of.
It's just so interesting, but there's just so many things going on and stuff. And I just want to say, I know I pointed out a lot of stuff like about that, like maybe them trying to push a vaccination or whatever, but it's so weird because I seem, for me especially, like very detached from that. Like, I mean, I realize what's going on and I hear people talk about it, and I don't really want to talk about it a lot, but I mean, like, when I do talk about it or whatever, it's kind of like, oh, that's what's going on. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
It's like the only way I can really describe it is how they describe, like, when people die and they're like attending their own funeral or whatever, they're not like upset about that because there's this protective detachment that they have, that they still know what's going on, but they're not like so distraught because their child's crying or something about their death. And I mean, that is exactly what I'm talking about. It's like I don't know, this is so new for me. It's like I can see it, I can talk about it, and it doesn't scare me or freak me out like it would have a year ago or something. So I'm happy about it. I'm thankful for it, but I don't know what that is.
So you mean specifically the Mandela effect, or?
No, I'm talking about like all the stuff going on, like with that virus and everything, and
and the vaccine,
like,
right?
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, I've had some anxiety lately, and I was so happy to hear you and Michelle talk about that on the show the other day because I'd had some weird anxiety pop up about different things, and I'm like, where is this coming from? Because I thought I had worked all this out, even with other subjects in my life, like almost like, say I conquered some kind of a thing and that was fear-based or whatever, and I'm like, oh, thank God I got this, okay? And then all of a sudden, it just sneaks back in all of a sudden, almost like this one little last attempt to make me say, oh, I thought I had that all figured out, and now I don't.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about, or that doesn't make sense?
Oh, yeah. But at least you realize, because, I mean, for some people, stuff comes up again, and they're like, why is this coming up again? And they don't realize. I don't know, back to that moving from feeling like you're being attacked every time it comes up to, feeling like it's a pop quiz,
Yeah, maybe so.
A bonus round. Bonus round. That's a good way of looking at it. That's how I try to look at it. But, you know.
Yeah, that's why I do like the game thing. And I mean, anybody, I'm sure all of y'all have heard. Like I said, I'm always behind everybody. But the book, Richard Bach, it's called Illusions. The audiobook is free on YouTube. But I got the book. It's like, you can get them for like $1 and stuff on eBay because it's a used book. But y'all really need to read that book because it really helped me so much. And it's really awesome. And it's a lot of the stuff that Shane talks about the game thing, and like I'm way into like movies and stuff, so it kind of brings that up a lot, which is neat because I could really relate to it and stuff. But I think everybody should read that book. It was awesome. That was a really well done book, and you can read it. And the YouTube video is like 2 hours and 30 minutes or something. So even if you read it out loud in your house, it would take you like 2 hours to read it. It's all, and it's so worth it and so good.
Yeah. That and anybody who, because I talked about watching that show. I think it's called Messiah or The Messiah or something like that, and I think it's got a season or 2 on Netflix. But Michelle and I were talking about it, and I think it's only got 1 season. Yeah, I think it's just got 1 season. But if you like that, I think you'll like this Illusions book. And like she was saying, you can actually just look it up on YouTube and just listen to the free version on there.
Yeah.
Illusions.
Well, it helped me because sometimes when I'm reading, I can notice I can read like 3 or 4 pages, and I'm like, oh, I got to go back and read that because my mind wandered somewhere, right? So what really helps me is if I read the book and listen to the YouTube audiobook at the same time, then I'm good.
Yeah.
Really good. Yeah. So
I have to do that with some stuff too.
Yeah, I did that with Self-Esteem Prophecy. So they have that on there too, y'all. It's like 9 hours, but that is like one of the best books ever. I love when there's a one that's like supposed to be, or it's like fiction, but it teaches you stuff that's nonfiction.
Right. That's like the Wingmakers. That's why people like got upset. They're like, it's a work of fiction. It's like the main message in it. In fact, that's one of the things that's helped me so much is that the breathing thing that I talk about, the conscious breathing thing, it's just helped me so much. And, you know, I didn't realize it when I covered that with the Wingmakers material, just how powerful it was. It's like one of those things that just, I don't know how many people have probably heard me talk about it, like over and over and over again. They're like, yeah, breathing, what can breathing do? And you've sort of discounted it. It sounds way too simple, right? But it is such a profound thing.
Yeah, I actually, you know,
tried it?
well, you've been talking about that like forever, and I just decided to like try it not long ago. And at first, it really wasn't doing anything, and then all of a sudden, it started working. So, I mean, I don't know. That could be why all this other good stuff's happening. I don't know.
It is so powerful, you guys, just to take a moment. I use triggers, anything. I'm starting to actually use anything. If I get a text, a notification, just anything at all, I just use it as a trigger to take a conscious, deep breath and just breathe in the divine bliss and perfection of this moment. And then sigh when I exhale.
Yeah.
And just let it all go. And just taking that conscious breath, it's like you get behind the steering wheel again every time you do that. And it sounds too simple. But once you realize, like, wow, I got triggered, somebody triggered me, I took a moment, I took a breath, and immediately I handled that way better than I would have, you know?
Yes. And I gotta say, this is why that chat room helps me so much, because, like, I'm looking on here, and, like, T. Taylor is saying, you know, we have to remember, though, that we're helping the collective purge and deal with some of this trauma that's been embedded within the cellular structure for multiple lives at this time. That is I have to like tell myself that too when I start having stuff come up, and I'm like, I had took care of this, you know, and then here it comes for a minute, real quick, you know, and I try to remember that, because I do think that I do things like that, or it's been made known to me in other ways, and so, you know, all I can hope is that I'm helping someone else with dealing with some of my stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So.
And T. Taylor's right. There is no way they're going to be able to pull off this mandatory Maxine, as Magenta Pixie says.
Maxine.
So please, everybody, do not worry about that. Do not add that into your energy. Do not add that to your fear. That fear is serving a very important purpose. If you guys are already awake, you already know what this stuff is all about. You don't need to be triggered by that. That's a stepping stone to those who really have trusted the system all this time, and now they're going to look into this stuff. They're going to be like, what the heck's going on? Other people will go and make a big deal out of it, so don't feel like you have to join in with every single thing. But if your heart is in it, go do it, you know?
Well, and that's what I'm saying too. Like, that would have been one of those things that I felt really detached from. But then every once in a while, I have a little bit of anxiety about it, and then I'm like, well, why am I having anxiety about that? You know. But it's possible that, you know, everybody is, and that we're all trying to help clear the collective of stuff like that. Because I know I've had anxiety and like purging type things come up, so I'm proof of it. Of what y'all were talking about.
Yeah, and you know what? It gets back to that thing that we talked about, like, you know, because you've talked about what sort of goes on the underground, and it's hard to just live your day-to-day life knowing what's going on. But you know, it's distinguishing what is within your sphere of influence and what is outside your sphere of influence. And I know most of us are rooting for, you know, rescuing these children and the things that, you know, you're worried about. Everybody I know in this that knows what's going on, that's like the ultimate goal. Really, we're moving towards that in everything we do. We're trying to have a world where that doesn't exist, right? So, but within your sphere of influence, outside your sphere of influence, the Maxine is a perfect example. I mean, you can talk about what they're trying to do and things like that, but that's not really in your sphere of influence. But when they knock at your door, or if something, comes, you get an email to sign a petition, then that's inside your sphere of influence, and so you can be a part of something like that. So it's that distinction between, are you just worrying about something that's not in front of you yet, or are you, actually dealing with something that you can do something about?
Yeah, right. And then this, who is it on here? It was Silver Moon had put, where's she at? Said, yes, we are helping the collective purge. And I just wanted to thank you for that. Because, you start doubting for a minute sometimes when it gets bad,
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
But we know we didn't come here for, some of the things we worry about. We know we didn't come that far.
Yeah. Like I said, I think everything's getting a little bit better, and I'm working through stuff slowly. Hopefully not as slowly as I did the red zone on Vanessa's chart. But, so has anyone else tried to call in? Is this thing working?
Looks like we've had one guest hop in and leave, but they were not on the phone. They were on the computer. So maybe you can join from the computer if anybody would like to call in. If you're getting a busy signal and you're not able to get through, you might want to try just going to the web address and connecting that way if you have data. That's a good way to do it anyway if you're international.
Yeah, it's good for those ones. So how about you? You been having any new kind of symptoms?
Let me throw out that website real fast. talkshoe.com/show/love stream. And let me pull it up over here in case something happens. So, just the dreamy thing that I was talking about, just being in, I don't know, things just being really surreal. I have been staying in the moment, but the moment has seemed pretty surreal. And I think it's just so much is happening right now. And in my meditation time, I can see so much, there's just so much movement and momentum going on right now. And it's just like I have to pull back and just let it go. It's like a circus. I mean, you can just, you really, it's going. You don't have to really take part in it. It's like really flowing, and I just kind of, I don't know, give it a little push here and there. It's, you got all these cogs turning and, little things that come your way, and maybe you'll pass along a link or share a video or do this and this, and you're just kind of just helping push the machine along, and we're all doing that, but everybody's joining in one way or another and getting the information out. But all in all, I'm just kind of observing it all. It's pretty interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think I'm getting better at observing stuff instead of like reacting to it. So that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I did notice like when everybody would talk about like colors and stuff looking different. And when you say surreal, I've noticed that like about outside lately, like when I look at, the trees, or if I'm like, out somewhere like out in the country or something and notice like the trees and stuff, like the colors on them will look so vivid, and so it looks just like a dream area or something. Like it looks like 5D. Even at my work, it's so nice outside. They have a pond and all this stuff, and the water will get so still, and then the trees and stuff are reflecting in the water, and it looks like some kind of card or something, but like a postcard or something, but it looks so enhanced and everything's so vivid, clear, and beautiful, and the colors are hard to even describe, like the greens and stuff are like more green or something, like not broccoli color, like I don't know, just really pretty,
Yeah, Karen's saying, yes, Sherry, vibrant. And that's
There's
sort of,
that's the beautiful word.
Vibrant. Yeah,
Karen, Karen, you should call in.
That's That's a great word, and that's what triggered the nostalgia the other day when I was looking at the pretty blue sky and the pretty green leaves and seeing that green and that blue together made me remember the light bright that I had as a kid and looking at those.
I love light bright.
Yeah. But I had this overwhelming nostalgic feeling come over me, and it just felt so good. And I was like, oh my gosh, light bright. I can remember, that was such a cool thing to have as a kid. And it just, I don't know.
Yeah,
It just
got
seems so
one for
magical.
Wyatt, and so I thought, well, Grant will like playing with that, trying to do all this homework and stuff. Like, turn around and Grant's mouth's full of light bright pegs.
Oh no.
Thought they looked so good all lit up that he'd just eat them. And then I tried to give him a Mancala game. I don't know if y'all know what that is. It's like got these little marbles and you play on the wood. The wood has little holes in it.
Mm-hmm.
He was like throwing them all over the house and trying to eat those. So I was like, just anything to keep him busy so you can do homework with Wyatt. With their mom working at home, trying to keep them quiet. And then they get in the car and turn the car alarm on, and I couldn't find the keys. And I'm gonna tell you, that's one thing that's coming up, y'all. They're saying that maybe this year for school they're gonna send like children A through L on Monday and Wednesday from 8 to 12, and then the L through Z's on Tuesday and Thursday 8 to 12. No school Friday. And my daughter and a lot of her neighbors were really freaking out because it was coming from a reliable source. It was the ones that told us that school was going to be shut down when it did shut down last time. Yeah. And they're not going back next year, y'all. I'm telling you. And when they do go back, it's going to be like that and very limited. And the babysitting issue is a problem for everybody on Kayla's block. But I figure this: if I decide that I'm not comfortable giving all of these pills and all these shots to people, then I'll just start babysitting instead of being a nurse, because I love babies. So,
well, I'm going to ask you a question. Anybody that's in the chat can answer this if they know the answer to this. But I see a split happening. If they did really push really hard with this, I can see there being, like for instance, in nursing, you were concerned about that. Is that something that when you get licensed, you're required by the state to have certain inoculations or whatever, or is it like your employer, different jobs have different requirements? It's different protocols at different hospitals or something.
It's like that. It's different protocols at different hospitals, and
But most do it or no?
I actually left the job recently because I was forced to get a flu shot, and I did not get it. And then I'm at a place now that's not funny about stuff like that, but it's very privately owned and very it's ran a lot very differently than a lot of other places. But
okay, so what my whole point though here is that if they did do that, somebody could go in business for themselves and say, well, we're going to have our own nursing, that we're just anti-Vs.
Well, that's what actually they're just anti anything they got to deal with. It's like we just need a nurse here to give the medicine, and that's it. They're not worried about all those kind of things that other people worry about. But I think the difference is
recording
when
started.
You have people filing for Medicaid and stuff, it involves like Joint Commission and people accrediting your hospital and stuff. And this is not that kind of place. It's like privately ran, a lot of cash payment, that cash patients and stuff like that, So for a while, I should be able to do that. I do think that there is one thing that I did for a little while too. There's a big demand right now. And everybody in the world would have a job if someone could take the money that like Medicare was paying for a nursing home and pay it to someone to stay at these people's house with them and take care of them and cook and clean for them or whatever, like kind of be like their nanny at home. And they get like so much better care and everything like that. I just kind of hope that maybe some of these things will shift, because those nursing homes, they'll put like 60 patients to one nurse, and it's just, I wouldn't work at one full time. I do it contract now sporadically, but I to do it full time, it's just not good. But I think there is enough funds there to do it where they put like one nurse or one respite care worker or personal care attendant with each patient at home, instead maybe doing it like that would be a different kind of option that where you wouldn't be subjected to all those kind of regulations, you know.
Right. So, see, I don't know if it would be an airport thing or an airline thing. You know, if like there was a certain airline that didn't require that, you know, if they try to push it to that, some of the extents that you hear about. I don't know. I don't see them ever getting away with any of that. There's too many people that need to travel. I mean, I don't need to travel, you know, bad enough. I'll just be like, hey, I'm not getting on your plane then. But some people have to travel, so.
Yeah, I see they're talking in the chat about the masks and stuff right now. And, you know, my daughter's a waitress, and she said that it was before they started them wearing a mask. Now they're having to, but she's like, people would drive up to get food and they'll like pull their mask down and, you know, say, I'm here to get whatever, like totally defeating the purpose. And so nobody's wearing these properly. The cloth ones have like gaps and stuff on the side. They're not keeping anything out. It's ridiculous, y'all. It really is.
Yeah, it's crazy. And man, I can't imagine working all day with one of those on. You know, everybody I see has to pull it down and get some air in their nose because it's just, you know, especially in restaurants, cooks and stuff. I feel bad for
crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's not good for you. You're inhaling your own carbon monoxide, and you know that I'm sure everyone saw it when I was watching that one video, and it was saying, and it made sense that like with everybody doing all this social distancing, staying in their house and stuff, and wearing the mask when they're out and about and everything. Once you do integrate these people back into the normal world, they're going to be getting sick left and right just from regular germs because they're letting their immunity not be built up like it was being built up. And so there's a point, you know, that's going to happen, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, if you guys heard recording started, that is, I guess someone called in. And so don't feel like your device started recording. People were like, I think the NSA is listening. We got such a funny group here.
Oh, did someone call in? You have someone holding?
I believe we have someone holding. Let me see if her hand is up.
Okay.
Do you want to check and see if you can call in?
Who, me?
Let's see. If you're on hold and you'd like to speak, please press *2 so I can see that you're not just listening. Of course, they can't hear you now, so. Okay, let me see who this is really fast.
Okay.
380 area code. Who am I talking to?
It's me, T. Taylor. Hello.
T. Taylor, what is up? Okay, so
I'm going to let you go.
Okay, can either one of you guys can't hear each other, right? Okay.
No, but thanks for talking to me. Love you, T.
It was like, I can hear you, but I can't hear anything.
A good one. I'm going to listen.
Okay, 1 second here. Okay. All right. Okay, we got T. Taylor on the line. So what is going on?
Oh, it's been interesting. I work in a doctor's office, so it's like on the front lines every day. So it's interesting. But I was in the chat and I was just listening to, you know, what everybody was saying, and so I thought, you know, I'll buzz in as we're talking about all these fantastic subjects. Because there's so much happening, right? I mean, there's just every day. Yeah. I tell people it's like, you know, through the looking glass every day. It's like an adventure in Wonderland. You just don't know what you're going to get. Like, it's just an adventure.
Right.
But, you know, I on the subject of, you know, I don't know. I think people were talking about handlers. I wanted to kind of pop back to that because there's only so much you can say in the chat. And I would just say, you know, my personal theory, of course, this is my belief system, is that when you awaken, you know, you just, you almost get, it's almost like, remember those old switchboards where they would like, connecting now, and they put these different lines in, right? And all these lights would light up from way back in the day. Might be before some people's time. But it's almost like, to me, when you awaken, that this giant light goes off on a switchboard. And then all of a sudden, it's almost like you get handed what I would call a handler. And somebody in the chat had asked earlier, could that be my ex, or do you think that's somebody? For me, I think that's more of a non-physical being. That's just me. Because they seem to, when I started my awakening, it seemed to be everywhere at the same time. It seemed to come through AI. It seemed to... anything that would affect me personally in one of the most intense ways is how it felt to me. And so only certain things could do that. What I would say, though, is that I think they can utilize unconscious people or people that are not awakened yet, especially those people who are partaking in substances to a degree where they're not in control of their faculties, and
Absolutely.
they open that door to let something else in.
It's like their little portals, yep.
Yeah, exactly. Or AI. I think that they can come through TVs, computers, phones, those types of things. Anything that's going to stretch you out and frustrate you. And one of the things I would say is, because somebody said, can you give me a sign or some way I'd be able to tell? And it's that vibration that will bring you to that lower place. Anything that's going to frustrate you, stress you out, anxiety, fear, anger, those types of vibratory patterns, you will always notice you'll get pulled to that place. It's never going to be anything that's going to lift you up. Right. So, for instance, I had a lot of people in my life that weren't awakened when I had my awakening. And there was something I did want to touch on, too, as I was listening to everybody. And I think a lot of what those of us that are in your chat and following your channel could maybe really resonate with is that there's something very interesting happening that we're seeing with the collective right now. And I'm in the process of making a video to talk about it, but everybody's so hypersensitive, I kind of put it on hold for just a second. But what we're seeing is just because the collective is awakening, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're having a spiritual awakening. A lot of people are having that, I took the red pill and I'm awakening to the fact that the matrix is what the matrix is. And everything was an illusion. But it doesn't necessitate or necessarily, mean that they are having a spiritual awakening along with that at the exact same time. Generally, when people have NDEs, they'll have both at the same time. I did. But a lot of people will go through one part of that process, and they'll have that reality awakening first before they have the spiritual awakening. And so those are two very different things, and we have to allow those people to wake up in the time that they're waking up. And a lot of us, when we wake up, we want to kind of ram down their throat, hey, you got to see this, and you've got to do this, and don't you see this, and oh my gosh, this is what woke me up. But that doesn't, it creates resistance. And then it can be very dangerous, especially right now, to trigger somebody's unconsciousness. I think Eckhart Tolle has a great video that talks about that. Can actually be physically dangerous sometimes to push somebody to awaken in ways before they're ready. And so we have to recognize that and just plant seeds where we can, more so than kind of trying to push. And I know that's hard, because when you wake up, you just want everybody to see what you're seeing. You're like, how can you not see this? But you really need to just take a step back sometimes and let people come to their conclusions in their own time, but plant those seeds where you can, and those will go a long way. Is just some of the advice that I would give on that subject, because they were talking about in the chat earlier.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. Yeah, 'cause it's so easy to get thrown all over the place now with so much going on, It's like, and, I enjoy actually keeping an eye on everything, just a little bit, not too much, because a lot of it's just repeating, and it can really just be like, oh, gosh. But I do like to check in on a few places that seem to combine things, sources and stuff like that, just to make it easy on myself. But, yeah, it's exciting. There's a lot going on, that's for sure.
There is, and you have to be careful, like I think one of you were saying too earlier, that, a lot of people are waking up with sadness right now too. They're waking up and they're not really understanding why they're waking up in this weird mood. Was I somewhere in my dreams? Like what? Like you guys were saying, and what I would say too is we are really feeling those of us that are integrating this higher lighter, really having these awakenings to such a degree, we become empathic on a level that maybe we weren't before. And we can really feel the field. That's what I call everything. It's kind of the field out there. And that means we are feeling the collective's energy. And a lot of these people, like I said, they're not having a spiritual awakening yet. They're just having that reality awakening. And so they're not really able to process some of these things from a higher level like some of us can maybe. or yet, let me put it that way. And so we are purging for them, and this could be from lifetimes that they're not quite keyed into yet. You know, there is so much just blood soaked into the land, you could say, just to, you know, kind of keep it basic, but that has to be cleansed on all levels, and sometimes they're not quite equipped to do it yet, so that kind of leaves it to the rest of us. I explain it kind of like we've gone through the forest with the machete and kind of knocked down a trail for them, you know, and then we just have to keep kind of pushing forward. But you can say to your higher self or your guides, or however you want to term that, each person has a different belief system, I would like to put up some boundaries so this doesn't affect me so personally. I'm okay helping the collective purge, but at the same time, I can't allow it to take me out. You know what I mean? Because some people just get overwhelmed in that process, and that can really take somebody out for days at a time if they just are stuck in that. And I would just say, try and lift yourself up out, and if you can't get yourself out, don't be afraid to reach out to those people that you know will rise you or inspire you or motivate you to laugh, to sing, to dance, to do those things that will raise your vibration and not keep you kind of stuck in like that quicksand of, you know, just all those lower vibratory, you know, emotions that people are feeling. And gosh, they're feeling it. You know, the collective is anxiety ridden. I work at a doctor's office. I deal with it daily. People are coming in that normally would never say anything about this stuff, but they're awakening at such a fast pace, which is why maybe this had to happen if we look at it from a higher perspective, but they're freaking out, let's be honest. Like that.
That's so true. But that's what makes it so exciting. I think we're really going to look back and think, why didn't I enjoy those times a lot more than I did? Because, man, there's just so much going on that we don't see, and it's only really going to be hindsight that we really see it all come together, you know what I mean? And realize exactly who was waking up and how many people were waking up right now, and it's incredible.
It really is. And if we can take a step back and kind of see it from that higher perspective, you know, nobody wanted this to happen, obviously. Nobody really prepared for this in this way. But we were all told that something was going to happen, you know, that would change everything. And one aspect this is, like I said, I've seen people that would never, ever normally question the government. But now they're questioning things that they never questioned before. And that's okay, and that's good. We needed that to happen because all of those faulty systems that were built off corruption, greed, you know, manipulation, abuses, all of those things have to crumble. They will not survive this higher life. They just won't. And so, you know, that's painful a little bit. It's sometimes opening your eyes to see is painful, but it's kind of like that arrow, you know, you got to pull it back, and it feels like you're not making any progress, but then that shoots forward in a very, you know, huge way. And so we're making progress very quickly, but, you know, it's a lot to pull a lot of people through this. You know, they just weren't maybe quite ready, but, you know, it had to happen. So as unfortunate as some of it is, you know, I think in the end, the result will be pretty amazing. You know, I just had a patient say to me like 2 days ago, like you guys were just saying too, is it just me, but are the colors brighter on the flowers? Is it just me? Because everything seems more vibrant. And I just had to laugh because I'm not really allowed to talk about that stuff at work. My boss knows that he's an energy guy a little bit, but he knows I'm out there for him. And I have to be careful what I say, but I just had to laugh because I'm like, oh, if I could have a conversation with you right now. Oh, yes, it's brighter. A lot of people are just having that kind of awakening happening. And so, you know, we just have to be patient as much as possible and try and find those moments, like you were saying, to live in the now as much as possible, but find those, you know, I was kind of quarantined for 20 years. So for me, this wasn't really, you know, I had to go home for 3 weeks, any different than it had been. But I learned to find love in the most basic of moments, washing the dishes, doing the laundry, a sunset. You know what I mean? Just very basic stuff. And I think a lot of people will start to recognize and appreciate those things, and it'll help push us through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I know you had some personal people that you personally knew that had died of CV. Did anybody else connected with them? Has it been making its way around? Or
Okay. So I haven't discussed this really publicly, and I've really been tiptoeing around it. In fact, I was putting some finishing touches on this video I'm going to release in the next couple days. And I'm trying to figure out how to address this. But because it's not my channel and it's yours, I'm just going to throw some stuff out there. Because nobody's watching me through your channel in my close circle, so I feel more able to say some stuff. So I had 2 deaths in my very inner circle, and I will just discuss that real quick. So the first one was the doctor that I work for. His mom died, who I've known for 25 years and just adored her. She was like one of us. She was just such a light. You know what I mean? Everywhere she went, she affected people in such a beautiful and positive and amazing way. And she actually got COVID and died. And so that's been very interesting to watch how that has facilitated part of an awakening for him, you know, and to watch him go through that. And then, of course, watch how it's resonated with each of the patients, and of course how it figures into this whole thing. You know what I mean? It's, you don't want to say too much, don't want to get your channel flagged, but it's very interesting because there are so many things about this that are being portrayed in the mainstream media that are just crap. I mean, I'm just going to say it. You know, we've been back at work for weeks, and even though he lost his mother, and he can't get closer to people, he's a chiropractor. He's bear hugging people daily, and we have hundreds of people come through our office weekly. We're one of the busiest practices in town. That being said, we're not wearing masks. We're not wearing gloves. I do wipe stuff down, but, you know, we've had no extra cases. Nobody's gotten sick. Nobody, you know, it's highly interesting to see how this is such a fear-mongering issue amongst the collective, and how it's being pushed in such an interesting narrative. Like, just trying to put this video together, I was trying to grab some images through Google, and it was highly interesting to me that every image I went to grab was very tilted on the narrative.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so ridiculous. I couldn't even find memes to use through Google because it is so slanted in one political view. That's how I'll put that. You know, and so what I think we're seeing too is that, you know, as these times are coming about, karma is being played out not only through the collective's karma, you know, and we're having to deal with that, but through individual karma. Everything I tell people is like the scales are being weighed right now in a very interesting way for not only the collective, but for us. And so, like, I have another death that has occurred in my inner circle, and my guy, his boss, apparently was involved in a homicide. So watching how this is played out with his karma, you know what I mean, and how this has just been a tragic and horrible situation for everybody involved over on the one side. And though my boss, who is such an amazing individual and such a caring individual and loving individual, did have a death, but seeing how his has been so supportive in a weird way, and seeing how many people are rallying around him, and how this is touching him and making him almost a better enhanced version of himself, even though he suffered something so horrible. Does that make sense? But it is very interesting to watch how the karma has kind of tilted in each atmosphere. You know what I mean? It's very, as an observer, it's been very interesting, and it's definitely affected my world in very significant ways on both sides. Let me put it that way.
Well, like Sherry was talking a little bit ago about people pulling the mask down to talk and just not being very germ wise as it comes to even how to use the personal protective equipment, right? Like, I mean, you just see, it's just so funny to watch everybody. I'm like, thank goodness that what they're saying isn't true, because if it was as contagious as they say it is, we'd be in trouble. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And like I said, I don't wear a mask. I don't wear a mask when I go to the store. I haven't worn a mask to be in contact with the patients. And my guy, he works in auto body, and so he actually has OSHA requirements. And they came in and gave a speech when this whole thing kicked off. And even when they're required to wear respirators all the time. And even then, you're required to take that off every so often for 15 minutes to get fresh air into your lungs. There's a reason for that. And what they told those guys was, cloth masks do not protect against this virus. Virus particulates are so tiny, they are microscopic. A cloth mask will not work. And for an N95 mask or above grade mask to work, it has to be fitted properly. It has to have an entire seal around it, and you can't have any facial hair for that to happen. So, you know, what's being projected, you know, if we go by the WHO, you know, first they said masks don't work, don't worry about it. And and then all of a sudden it's, oh, everybody has to wear a mask, and if you leave your house, you could even get a $1,000 fine. In my county, they just tried to say starting today that if you left your house, you had to have a mask on. Well, guess what? 80% of the people that I'm seeing out and about are like, we're not going to follow your order, because it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf. People are starting to really see through these things. I mean, I just posted on my Facebook yesterday 2 images that I just thought were startlingly perfect to kind of describe where we're at with this now. And one was a restaurant or a bar that was requiring people to wear giant inner tubes. I'm not kidding. These are ginormous inner tubes. You can find an image of it online, like you are wearing an inner tube to go into this bar or that is the most ridiculous. I don't even know how you could sit down in it, first of all. That is the craziest thing I've seen yet. And then this other restaurant in Germany is requiring people to wear pool noodles on their head that are 6 feet long, 2 of them at a time. Like what ridiculousness are we coming to? This is insane. We got robot dogs in Singapore, keeping social distancing intact. We got drones. We're arresting 93-year-old people. It's just, we've reached a point of ridiculousness. Like in my town too, they tried to, and they pulled it very quickly because the militia was starting to arm, and they were going to come from all across the nation to combat this, including members of the NRA, because they released an email saying we're going to have a city council meeting and we're going to institute a new law stating of a firearm will now be an illegal possession of a firearm, and we will actually come to your house and take them from you. I'm not kidding. And that went down so quickly, it lasted about a few hours before people had mobilized across the entire nation, and we're like, we're not going to allow that. You know what I mean? But it's very interesting to see how the light is coming through and showing very quickly the duality on which side people are kind of on. And I would just advise people, remember the name of the game is division. Overall, that is the biggest name of the game is how far can we get with people giving up their rights, and remember to divide yourself. So just remember, when you're talking to your loved ones, even if they don't share your viewpoint, don't let yourself get divided from them, because after all, when all is said and done, we all bleed red.
Mm-hmm.
We really do.
That's so true. Yeah, and it's like, that's what I was talking about, the whole idea of it being a catalyst right now, and it can push you one way or the other, and you can see people either becoming more selfish or becoming more loving and caring and compassionate,
Exactly. And I think stress brings out either the best or the worst in people sometimes, and you're seeing a lot of people who, just didn't want to see what the illusion was. It's kind of like, in that scene in The Matrix where the guy betrays everybody. And I've said this before a few times, but, and the Matrix agent Smith says to him, well, why would you betray your own people and help us? And he said, I know the steak isn't real, but it just tastes so damn good.
Right.
And so I think, right? I think a lot of people, even if they are awakening, are becoming fearful about what they're awakening to, because they don't know which way to go. There's so much contradiction, even within our communities, you could say light worker communities. There's still so much contradiction happening right now, and a lot of division, and people pointing fingers, and you're wrong because of your political beliefs, or you know what I mean? And it's just becoming this kind of farce a little bit. And so they're just getting confused and kind of lost along the way. I mean, waking up is hard enough. And most of us did it years ago a little bit, or at least before this happened. And I can't imagine waking up during the middle of all of this. That would be very, very difficult. So we just remember we have to have patience for these people. We have to try and help where we can, follow that intuition. We have that voice that speaks to us. Everybody has it. So just, be as gentle and as kind as you can. Even to people that don't necessarily share your beliefs, but plant the seeds where you can, and just remember that whatever they're going through is just as important to them as what you're going through.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've even been shown, sort of give people things that help them where they're at on their journey, not so much try to get them where you're at, but kind of try to remember where you were at that time, and maybe connect them with some people with some solid teachings that are less fear-based, for where they're at, though.
Absolutely. Yeah, I tried to knock everybody over the head when I first woke up and started seeing those physical changes within my body, because that's kind of my thing. I mean, I tried to knock everybody over the head, or, with I think when I first woke up, Pizzagate was happening and all that kind of crazy stuff. And I tried to look at this, everyone. And all that did for me was separate myself from my loved ones. It caused 2 years of division. I think me and my mom we weren't even close for 2 years, and she's always been my best friend because they just weren't at that level. And like you said, such a profound statement. Meet people where they can be met.
Yeah.
It's really important because they're not at where you're at, and that's okay. But, just try and guide them. It's like, having a child who's riding a bike with training wheels. We don't just throw them on a motorcycle and say, okay, go. There's a reason for that. They start out slow. They start out on a tricycle. They start out with us holding their hands with the training wheels. And we just have to remember this is a little bit like that. We can't just push people into bombarding them with everything that's going on because their senses are just so overwhelmed already with what's happening. And this is, there is something I really wanted to touch on too, because I'm seeing a lot of this in our community too. And a lot of people, if you try and bring anything up about what's happening, and they're like, you're focusing on the negative, you're fear mongering, this and that. I think I put up one community post recently and everybody freaked out, so I took it down. But it's like, you have to have a balance between the 5D world and above, obviously, of higher love and vibration, but you can't just spiritually having in our reality. So there's something to be said about not wanting to plug energy into it and making that a stronger vibratory pattern, but at the same time, if we all just ignore it, guess what doesn't change?
Right.
The issue, Yeah. So you have to find the balance somewhere in between the two, and that's very difficult to do, and I think a lot of people are just kind of trying to master that now, but we can't just overlook everything and say, I want to stay in my meditative bubble all day long and not apply anything in the physical. We have to get out from behind the keyboards or whatever that is, get out of our house for a moment at some point when you can, and get out there and actually do something in the physical to change things. That is very important. Or nothing's going to change.
Yeah. And you were so right about the division or whatever. April's chiming in saying division is the goal of destroying unity, which is what we're striving for right now. The whole unity wave that is talked about, and we're trying to tap into that, or the Christ consciousness, if you will. But it's that service to others sort of energy, compassion and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be that way. We can't just everybody take a side and stay on that side, because then guess what? They win. That is their overall strategy. If we really get down to it, it's division, because when they divide us, they can take us out easier. That's,
right.
When we are together and united, they can't do that. But when we're divided, we fall so much easier.
And I think the key right now is really to just be led by your heart, because if you're being led by fear or led by your heart, led by love and compassion and things like this, or if you're just reacting out of what you're seeing and you're reacting out of fear and it's that fight or flight part of your brain. We know when we're in alignment or not, or in the vortex, as Abraham Hicks talks about. So it's really operating from that place of love rather than fear, and using that as sort of your discernment key,
Operate from that place. You're exactly right. And when you operate from that place, you can hear that voice of the divine or the voice of spirit or the synchronicities or whatever you want to say. When you can get to that level, that's when those really start hitting so much harder. And that's when your manifestation happens so much quicker. When we're operating from a place of fear, it lowers your vibration, and we manifest to us the frequency that we are at. And so I know if I start to allow myself to feel those lower vibratory emotions, or I get stuck in anger, or I get stuck in fear, or those places, guess what happens in my world really quickly? Goes to heck in a handbasket. Things just start going wrong. And I break electronics when I'm upset. Nobody really believes me at my work, and guess what? They're all believers now. They all believe me now. They're like, oh yeah, wow. Please don't touch anything when you're upset anymore. Pot's going down, vacuum cleaner will go down, computer is going to go down. There'll be a problem.
So things getting back to normal at the job, or is that?
Love it. Yeah. So we actually got, I think I'm just so blessed to work work for somebody that really does on some level understand energy. He always did. And I think us having 20 years like separation, because I had worked for him when I was a kid and I'd worked for him for 8 years. We had our children at the same time, kind of grew up together, and then I took like 20 years off to stay home with my children. And it's been very interesting to be able to come back in and just kind of see how this is all playing out in that environment. But yeah, he feels a lot like I do, and I feel very blessed to be there because, you know, he's like, I'm going to take care of people. And he's such a good guy that way. You know, he's like, I'm here to take care of people. I'm not going to leave people, you know, stranded. I'm not going to place my own fear above what my job is. And I've supported him in that, you know, hugely. And I'm like, I will be there if you're there. And I think to see the people come in, it's like they walk in the door and they're scared. They're anxiety ridden. They're like, do I have to wear my mask? And I'm like, no, we're not requiring it. And they all instantly just do this sigh of relief. And they take it off, and they're like, we're so that you're here. And they're just, you know, it's a return to normalcy for a lot of people, just to be able to go, you know, just to the chiropractor. Yeah, I mean, it's just to get out of their house for a minute, and people need that connection. You know, I just re-released on my community page a video I'd done, you know, before this whole thing tipped off. And at the end of that video, I use like this free hugs. I talk about how hugging is so important. And no, I realize that we can't all do that right now, but at the same time, my point is we cannot allow that physical connection to become unimportant or to allow this to continue for an indefinite period of time for forever. Because as human beings, that's who we are. We feed off each other's energy in a way, not vampiric in nature, but we rise by lifting others. And when we can't connect with each other, the isolation can really be a huge problem, you know, and so it is so important just to be able to interact with other people. You know, we have elderly people that come in all the time and they don't get to get out of their house. They don't get to see anybody else. And so for them just to come in, just to see their faces light up and see how happy they are, just to interact with other people it makes my day every day. I just feel very lucky.
Oh, that's so sad that, you know, they already are probably lonely, and this has probably just really compounded that for a lot of people. So, yeah, that my heart really goes out to them. Because even, you know, that's a tough time just being stuck in the house by yourself. So, yeah, I can imagine that it's like solitary confinement, you know what I mean? I mean, I have noticed this, too, that nobody seemed like, at least in my circle of people I know, everybody's hugging everybody, and nobody's, you know, freaking out or acting, you know. I don't know. I guess high-risk people like my mother-in-law, she's been kind of staying away, but she's got like 5 other things in the high-risk thing. So she's, you know, and I think that's really how it should be. People that are more high-risk should, you know, maybe have people go out and get things for them or something like that. And, you know, that would make more sense to me anyway.
I completely agree. And for me, I'm just kind of a science gal to some degree. I mean, I try to balance between the energy and the science, but part of my brain is always very interested in science and medical things behind things. And for me, the statistics just do not back up what we've seen happen across the nation. You know, that's just my viewpoint. Even in my town, like I live in Washington State, the first state to have any cases on the radar. And like I've said to a lot of people that have come in the door at our office, you know, I think it was around months before they announced it was around, you know, because my son, I posted something on Facebook back in October that he was in the hospital having work done because he could not breathe. He couldn't breathe. What does that sound like, everyone? You know what I mean? In a way we hadn't seen before. And we have a lot of people, like one of our patients said that they have a guy who goes and flies to China twice a month, and he lives here. You know, and so we also we're a border town to Canada. We have a huge amount of Asian Canadians that go back and forth to Canada, and we have a small airport, and they'll take those big flights into Seattle and then take the hopper to our town and then stop and get gas and groceries and then in our town and then drive across the border. So it's really not outside of the realm of possibility that, yeah, maybe it was here before it was publicly announced, you know, and so I just try and tell people, like you said, maybe those that are at a higher exposure limit, be more precautionary. But it doesn't mean that the rest of us have to stop living. You know, there are always risks in life, and it should be up to the individual. But we shouldn't have our complete constitution trampled on in the process. I know I came from a military family, and my relatives would be turning over in their graves right now because they fought for our freedom. And it sure seems like we all are under martial law right now without actually, having armed men outside of our doors. It's like we all just gave up so many of our constitutional rights within 1 to 2 months. I mean, look how many changes we all just accepted overnight because we thought it was the right human beings do. We are kind, like we vibrate to compassion. That's what we are on a very basic level. And so we all wanted to do the right thing, but at this point, with the light pouring in, it's becoming very clear who has ulterior motives, is what I would maybe say.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so funny how clear things are and how easy it is to miss stuff when you're caught in the chaos or you're caught in thinking you've got it all figured out. I don't know. I like to just sort of just put all the information out there, check it out, and see where it goes,
And that's what and that's what I would say to each person. Each person has to use their discernment. They have to figure out what works for them, what resonates to them. We shift in every single moment, and so like what we were talking about earlier, you're really picking the timeline that you want to shift to. There is infinite reality. There really is. And so if you're going to get stuck in this gloom and doom reality, guess what you're going to see more of in your physical reality? More of that same stuff that you're afraid of, but you're thinking about it so much, you're bringing it in. So, But here's the good news. You can change that very quickly. You just have to change your mindset. So something I do each morning when I get up is before I think about anything, I consciously stop myself and say, I'm going to have a great day, and I set some very specific intentions for myself. And guess what? My day goes much better than if I just start thinking about all the crap that's wrong, the bills I have to pay, all the stressful things, because it just sets the tone for the rest of my day. And then I find that my day is usually pretty crappy.
That's so funny how one little thing can just snowball into ruining your whole day, and it spreads to the people you encounter. The teller, the little convenience store clerk, everybody you encounter, you're like spreading that negative vibe, but you can turn it around and do just the opposite.
Absolutely. So funny you said that because my son just said to me yesterday, he said, Mom, when you came home and you were upset yesterday, they believe me now that I'm empathic, but he said, you have this ability that I said, I know. I just finished the statement. I said, I know. I gave it out to everything in my surroundings, and I am so sorry. I didn't mean to give it to you. I didn't mean to give it to the teller when I went through the check stand. But, we have to remember, too, that as we develop more of this empathy and we become more empathic, it's not just us feeling other people's stuff. We do develop that ability to shift that out to everything that we encounter in our field. And so we do need to be careful because we don't want to make somebody's day worse just because we're having a moment, and we'll find that trigger scale, it used to be 0 to 5 if we were having a moment, and now it's like 0 to 50 really fast. And then if you get upset, right? You get upset about one thing, before you know it snowballs into all of this other crap. And so sometimes it's really great if you can catch yourself in those moments to just realize what's happening, say, I'm going to take a step back, I'm going to go take my shoes off, I'm going to go barefoot and stand out in the grass, or I'm going to play with my animal, whatever that is that gives you back that feeling of grounding, whatever that is for you. Sometimes water can do incredible things. Sometimes just taking a shower or a bath will really get off some of that negative energy. If you have to work all day and you can't get out of that situation and it's something that, kind of brings you down, take a shower, take a bath, whatever you have to do. Sometimes that just water can really help cleanse you.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, and I find that, you're actually grounding. Most bathtubs, anyway, that are metal, the pipes go down into the ground, and you're actually grounding as you sit there and take a bath. So you can take a salt bath, and you're getting the grounding plus the water cleanse as you're talking about.
Absolutely. And don't forget you can put salt in the bathtub, too. Like a lot of times if I'm feeling, especially if I have to be around somebody that is just icky energy, and we've all had those people around us. We all know who they are. Sometimes putting some salt in the bathtub, really helps to cleanse that as well. speaking of that, though, I wanted to touch on going back to like the handler thing and the matrix, and when you're awakening, having people, triggering people's unconsciousness. I would say that there are what I would consider to be agent Smiths. Some people might call them bots within the surroundings that we have. I haven't really weighed in on whether I think they have souls or any of that, but I do think that there are people who are placed there really more than anything to get in our way when we're going through an awakening. I think you can reach a level, though, where you bypass most of that unless you lower your vibration back to that. Does that make sense? I think you can end up back to that place, right? But I think once you reach a certain level, you can kind of bypass most of that. But when you're just awakening and you're not sure how to do that yet, and I would highly encourage people using something like a 12D shield, or really using maybe some playlists to really give up some of those old belief systems that they're not allowing themselves to bypass some of that. They're allowing other things to have control over their emotions and feeding off of them. But it can really be, when you're out just running around, you can run into people that I would consider to be bots or unconscious. And that can be really difficult because they will do anything they can to trigger you. Their whole goal is to either feed off of that energy or bring you down to that vibrational level. So you just have to be aware of that. And sometimes you just got to go, I'm not going to let that person get to me. They're trolling or whatever you want to call that, however that makes it clear for you. But you just have to be, set some very clear boundaries on what you're willing to let affect you in your personal field.
Yeah, absolutely. I was checking out the chat here. Let me make sure I'm not missing anybody here. Yes, Epsom salt and shungite in the bath, says Janice, as well as walking barefoot in the grass. That's a good one. I just find just appreciating nature, just not necessarily even just, just send out love to just having that appreciation, you just go out and just love on everything as you look around, and it feels like it loves you back,
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because all of my neighbors, I live up on a very high hill, and so many of my neighbors have cut all their trees down, because they want the view, and I've refused to. I just won't do it. But it looks like all the trees are now like literally crowding onto it literally almost looks like they're hugging, like they're leaning into my property because they're like, we don't want to get cut down, we want to stay here. But sometimes for me, just going out and just, I know it sounds silly, but just talking to nature, talking to the trees, singing to the birds. I do a lot of calls to the birds, and then I listen and they call back. And that's when, I got raccoons and deers, and I'm really lucky in that respect. But, sometimes, for each person, they have to find what works for them. And just getting outside and breathing in sunshine right now is one of the best things you can do. It's an energy, it's a food source for those of us integrating that higher light. And so I highly recommend if you can get out and just get some vitamin D. Not only does it boost your immune system in a serious way, but it really is an energy and food source for us at this time. So, that's one of the very easy, fastest things you can do, and it will raise your vibration very quickly. And just taking 5 deep breaths outside in that sunlight without a mask can really change your whole mood very, very quickly.
Yeah. And, that's so funny that you said that, because I've been so drawn to getting up and watching the sunrise and even the sunset at night, but it's hard to catch it. But you can sun gaze at those times. It's much easier on the eyes to catch it just as it's, about to go over the horizon or just coming up in the morning.
Right. I do it in the afternoons usually because I'm at work pretty early. But yeah, I do it in the afternoons, and you're exactly right. It is easier on the eyes. And for me, I just love that, watching it kind of go down. That's my, that's my favorite time. But it's just such a relaxing time. And it really, 5 deep breaths, the masters, have been saying that for forever. You could say, people that are gurus or monks, who get really into that, they've been saying for the longest time, breathing, such a simple thing that we all take for granted, can really, really change things up very quickly. And so if you are in a situation that you can't leave, you're stuck quarantined in a house with somebody, sometimes just 5 deep breaths can really, really calm you down and take you out of some of that energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing that's been just tremendous for me is the breathing work. Just because you're taking control of it. Breathing's sort of automatic, but you take it over and it just, I don't know, you just get back into control of the whole situation. And, it really started out, I'd have a troll leave me a comment and I'd leave the first comment and then I'd get to the end of it and cool off a little bit and then end up deleting the whole thing and starting over again. And,
I've done that. I just did it the other day. I responded in hate. I got triggered a tiny bit, and then I thought, you know what? I don't want any of this energy because I understand where they were coming from, and I just reacted emotionally. So delete it goes. There we go. But that's okay. I look at that too sometimes like Lincoln letters, back in the day where they would say if you have a lot of things you want to say to somebody, write it all down, but you don't necessarily have to send it, you can just burn it or you can just, have closure knowing that you got out what you wanted to say. And sometimes I think that's social media now too, in the comment section, you respond to something very triggered and then you have time to reflect on it and go, you know what, I see where that person was coming from. I don't agree with where they were coming from, but there's no need to argue about it.
Right.
I'm just going to let it go.
Yeah, I even went to the point of having somebody leave me this, really religious comment and realizing that they were really completely doing it out of love where before I would have got triggered and said, well, you're taking a step back, or I don't know what I would have said, but, it would have been something like more in defense of my position instead of just realizing that, oh, you know what, they did that out of love, ultimately. I might not have the same truth, but their intentions were good, That's not always the case, by the way.
No, you're right. I get a lot of religious comments. Sometimes that's not the case, but but yeah, no, I got
some of them actually want you to go burn
ago.
in hell, I think,
I got that. You will burn in the eternal pit of fire. And I'm like, that's not nice. Gosh, who's eating your Cheerios today? Tell you what. Just minding my own business over here. Now I got to go burn. That's not fair. What's up? But, sometimes you just got to, hi, Vice Guys 5D. I see you in the chat. But yeah, sometimes you just got to let it go and realize that, not everybody's going to see your viewpoint. And you know what? That's okay because that's what makes us diverse, and that's all right. If we were all exactly the same, it would be so boring. We'd all be
wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be super boring. So it's good to have differences of opinion and it creates discussion. And as long as we can have the discussion and be respectful to each other, and that's a little, I think, what we're lacking right now. I think as the collective awakens, everybody's just so hypersensitive, and it has to be their way or the highway. And the duality is just becoming so clear that people are just feeling they have to take a side. And I just, I would just encourage everybody, like I said, just to remember we all bleed red at the end of the day. Nobody's coming out bleeding green yet, or, even sparkly, quite all the way yet, and we just have to remember that, what got us there isn't going to get somebody else there, and they'll get there. It's just going to take time. Some people, it might take more than one lifetime, but it's just going to be some time.
But we're not lacking. I mean, time isn't limited. Like, that's part of the illusion as well. So even if it took somebody 1 billion years, they'd come around sooner or later, hopefully.
Hopefully. Exactly. They'll get there. We'll just have to have a conversation. That's all. But yeah, I think I would encourage everybody just, keep your sense of humor right now and just know that, there's some really intense things happening all around us. But I truly believe, and like Magenta Pixie had said, and I completely agree with her, that though they're trying for this hijack timeline, we could say, they're trying to pull off this last-ditch effort. I would just, it's a lot like people who are drowning, and they're trying to climb on top of you to get out. Their food source, they're starting to starve. A lot of them fed off of those lower vibratory patterns, and they're realizing very quickly that that's bleeding, and that's scary to them. So in some ways, we have to have compassion that, they're freaking out because their way of life is over, as everybody's starting to become higher in consciousness, and try and hold some excitement for what's going to come, and just try and remember that The people will rise up if they have to. You know, if there was going to be a push for mandatory vaccination, I guarantee you, at least the people in my community, even those who are pro-vaccine, would not tolerate that.
Exactly. I'm so glad you said that. That's a great point. Because even all the, you can't even say that everyone who's pro-vax would even support that, because, people believe in people's right to choose, especially when it comes to your medical care,
Absolutely, and I think people are really realizing, as they're seeing what's playing out, that even if they're pro-vaccine, they're questioning a lot of the who, what, where, when, whys on this vaccine in particular, especially it being rushed and just some of those other things. And like you said, I have a lot of elderly people that we see at our office, and even people who would never say anything politically have very clearly stated to me, we'll fight if we have to. We're not going to let somebody just come in and inoculate us against our will. And I think that what you would see is a very quick end to that.
Right.
Agenda 50. So I would just think, I would just say, and here we have to also remember that the first oath of medical doctors is do no harm. So what I tell people all the time, because I've been in vaccines for 20 years dealing with vaccine-injured children and adults, is, your get-out-of-jail-free card in any court, if they're trying to do a mandatory vaccine for you, is first do no harm, and they cannot predict who is going to have adverse effects, and they know there will be adverse effects to any vaccine, that there is a population or a percentage of the population that will have negative effects. That is why 75 cents out of every vaccine goes into a national vaccine injury compensation program. So they cannot say with any accuracy who will have adverse effects. So therefore, they cannot mandatorily inoculate somebody because they do not know if they will do harm. And that is their oath. First, do no harm. Even in a pandemic, there is no authorization that would override that in our, in anything that we have on the books. So I would just encourage people to don't feed into that fear. Don't let that get you to a place where you're paralyzed. It's okay to look at things and be aware of what's happening around you, but don't let it paralyze you.
Absolutely.
That would be my advice.
Yeah, I don't know why it's a lot of it's just programming, because you hear once we get the vaccine, you know what I mean? It's like over and over again. Like that's the only solution, you know what I mean?
Right, and then you have places that California are saying we're not going to open up all the way until there's a cure. We're not going to allow you to leave your house. That puts people in a panic, of course. Why wouldn't it? But at the same time, I would just say, just have faith. There's a reason this is happening. Something had to awaken people in a way that was going to, I think I have a video called Watch Before You Start Your Day. And in the very beginning of that video, I show somebody not wanting to get out of bed. I said, some people are waking up very easily. Some people are really resisting awakening. And so sometimes it's like you have to throw some ice water on them. So some people had to have NDEs. I did years ago. Some people had to have something major affect them in such a way that it shook the very ground and the very core of who they were and what their priorities were, because we had to all start looking around us at what we were plugging into. And so in one respect, this has really done that. I mean, and I tell people all the time, because I have so many people talk to me about it every day in my office. Everybody that comes in wants to chat with me about it. And it's like, in some ways, this was great, because how many people had been working so much that they had become disconnected from their families. They had become disconnected from their loved ones. They didn't have any time to sit there and meditate. They didn't have any time to look inward. It was just go, get that money, because I have to feed my children, or I have to do this, or I have this responsibility, or they were just programmed into doing it on that hamster wheel. And so they really were able to take time in the last couple of months to take time, sit back, look and observe, see what's actually illusion, what is real, and reconnect with those people that they love. And so there's a lot of good things, I think, that have come out of this. I hope that we'll see that on the back end of this, shortly, hopefully.
Yeah, I believe so. Completely in agreement with you. I don't think we've seen all that this is going to yield. I think it's something we'll see in the future, just how much was happening behind the scenes right now, because everybody's at home, and how many people are sitting at home and they think everyone else is sitting at home, but you go out and, there's a large group of people that are just still carrying on as they were before, So it's kind of funny that, there's just this whole range of people responding in all sorts of different ways. And it's almost set up to where we're like self-policing too. You know what I mean? They get like people turning against other people, and just out of fear, of course. But it's all going to work out in the end. So no fear.
I agree, and I think it's just something to look around. Like I said, try and be the observer and be aware. But remember, you have to keep that balance between the 5D and above. So of course, meditate and do those things and be in your bubble and do all those things. Turn inward, do the nature thing. But at the same time, don't just spiritually bypass what is the actual reality is. And you can do that in a way that you're not. What's the word I'm looking for? Solidifying that more in the grid. You're not making that a stronger vibratory pattern. There's a way to look at things and not completely plug all of your emotions into it, and kind of stay back a little bit. And so you're aware of what's happening, and you're able to make changes in little ways to try and affect the outcome of that. Does that make sense? Without completely freaking out and becoming paralyzed and just losing your crap about it.
Right. But I think that's why we're here. We're kind of here is to keep people calm about it, as they can have someone that's calm, that's not freaking out, that has the higher perspective to help them through it at this time. Because, gosh, I feel so sorry for them, because when I woke up with the Mandela effect, I'd already realized so many things, like the 9/11 and all that stuff. But for people who sort of just getting whammied with all of this stuff at one time, because how one thing leads to another and another and another, and it just unravels. And how many people have gone down that series of rabbit holes in this time off,
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I just woke up during Pizzagate, and that freaked me out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To wake up, in the middle of this would be terrifying, and I completely understand that, which is why I say to people, be really patient with your loved ones. And just try and we are the lighthouses. We are the calm in the storm, and that's why we were so important. That's why we are the wild cards. That's why we woke up in advance. That's why there were the 3 waves of volunteers that Dolores Cannon talked about. It was just so important. And, there's a reason for that, because we had to be the anchors, I guess you could say. So that everybody else is out there floating around and freaking out and getting rocked around in their boats and not knowing how to steer, we can say, hey, I got you.
Exactly. That's beautiful, T.
But
Taylor.
anyway,
Let me ask you this, because Janet was mentioning that you have Ormus. So anybody that's not, are you doing Ormus right now, T?
I am. I haven't been doing it a lot like I was, just because I've been working so much and I kind of had taken a step back. But I can produce it again. I did do a big batch for, I think it was April. I did the supermoon, or another one. I did a supermoon in April. And I was just getting ready to do another one. So I've had a lot of requests for it lately. So let me do a brief rundown. For those of you who don't know what Ormus is, everybody has monoatomic gold within their structure. It's in the environment, the water, the air. It's just a lot of times we've polluted our bodies and the environment so heavily, we don't get the amount that we need for full functional capabilities. So I produce it on the side. I use the Egyptian method. So if you do want some, just give me a holler. I'll put my if you could throw a link up for my channel, or I'll put a comment up in there with a link that you guys can reach me. It does take 4 to 6 weeks to produce, so I only have a couple of batches on me right now that are already produced. So just FYI. But that way people can also ask for specific intentions. I lay intentions with them and charge them with the moon, the full moon, and the sun every day, or the moon cycle and the sun every day. And so I lay intentions on them, but sometimes people like to add their specific intentions. And the great thing about Ormus is it really responds to energy. It just does. It's like, Dr. Emoto's work, where he shows when we speak to things, it produces a physical reaction, like the water crystals. When we think of horrible things, it looks icky. When we think of good things, it looks amazing. And Ormus is just one of those weird things that we don't quite understand how it works all the way, but we feel like it has interdimensional properties, is what it's been said. And so I've just found it's been a tremendous boost for those people, especially just starting, I would say, the light body integration process, that have had a lot of health issues, that have been on a lot of medications. It can really just give you that kickstart for your own body to start making the amount that it needs for you to have that health on your own. So if you want some, I'll throw a link up. That's where,
Awesome.
that's my
Yeah, I was trying to scroll back to your name so I could jump to your channel, and then I couldn't go back far enough. So I will. I'll let you post the link in as I'm closing it out. I'll let you do that. All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Tony. I appreciate you always.
And thank you, because it's channels like yours that really help people during this time. And I just want to say I love you to everyone. Stay calm, be the calm in the storm, and do those kind and compassionate acts for everybody that you come up. And I will talk to you guys all later. Love ya.
Love you. Have a good one.
Bye. You too.
Let's go.
You're listening to The Love Stream.
Unbiased and on the fence.
All right, so awesome. So glad Tony got through because, I don't know, we were getting some weird busy signals and stuff going on early. But I'm glad I had Sherry on to share her experience, followed by Tony. So we had two great callers. I really enjoyed the time tonight, you guys. Let me look here and see if I missed anything here. Let's see. I will give, I'm trying to give T. Taylor a little time to post her link in there. So we will be back tomorrow night, Eileen and I, for The Power of One. Let's see. I want to say, okay, so we will be back at 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Hopefully we won't be running late. There we go. T Noah's Ark at Comcast.net. That's how you can reach T. Taylor. Perfect. All right. T Noah's Ark at Comcast.net. Yeah, you missed Sherry, Rita. She shared an interesting story right at the top of the show about someone that had died of a drug overdose, and the hospital had them mark it as a COVID death on the for the cause of death, and they had the family sign a paper so that the hospital could get more money. So I just found that. I mean, I've already heard about things like that going on, but it's so much different when you actually know someone who knows the actual person that happened to. So, all right, perfect, you guys. So we will be back tomorrow night. Lots of love, light, and unity to each and every one of you. Have a good one. Be sure to check out the website at uotf.net. There you will find the live stream schedule displayed in your local time right there on the front page. Below that, you'll find links to take the Beyond Quantum Healing course at a discounted rate, purchase our book, Mandela Effect, Friend or Foe, in paperback or ebook, or to contact me to schedule a BQH session. At the top of the site, you'll find links to help support the work I do, access the free private forum where you can discuss organizing get-togethers in your area, Mandela effects, and more. Thank you all so much for being here.